Hello, hello, hello. You are very welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. I'm Daragh. This here's Shane.
Hello.
We're two brothers talking all things rugby from the point of view of Leinster and Ireland. We got a big show coming up this week. Glad to be back. Obviously, we haven't done a show since the Six Nations, so there's lots of different things to look ahead to. But the main story this week, as I'm sure you all know, anyone invested in our podcast will be well aware of the Lion selection that's going on this weekend. We're going to have a show looking into all of that. We're also going to look ahead to the Super Rugby finals, which are taking place this weekend. So it's a huge week, and delighted to be back talking about it.
Absolutely, yeah. As you say, we're going to open the show looking at that the Lion selection. Really, that's kind of the big news. It's going to be happening this Thursday. We're going to go through the main options in the different the various positions and the bookie odds, and then kind of reveal our own picks with that as well.
Absolutely. And then also, as I say, the two Super Rugby finals. We've got the Crusaders Chiefs in Super Rugby Aotearoa. Class game, one of the all-time great games. Probably my favourite isolated fixture of Super Rugby for as long as I've been watching it. Always great games. And then the Brumbies and the Reds, who've played out two crackers already and are two really evenly matched teams in the AU finals. So we're going to be digging into both of those games ahead of the finals this weekend. We're also going to briefly look back on the Women's Six Nations, which actually happened in our little interim gap. We're just going to take a recap of what happened there and all things going on in the women's game.
Absolutely. And then we're going to pivot into club footy, just kind of across the world as well. We'll look back on the dramatic weekend of European rugby from the Champions and Challenge Cup this weekend. I'm going to check in on the English Premiership and the Top Tours as well, which has continued. The Rainbow Cup, the much maligned but Rainbow Cup and much chop and changed has got underway in the interim, so we'll look into that, as well as the Top League, which is getting into its postseason now this weekend, as is the SLAR in South America, both of those getting into finals footy, and we'll also take a look at the MLR over stateside as well.
Yes, indeed.
We're going to wrap up the show then, at the very end, with the news of the week.
As we always do, yes. And there's also just another tidbit for you. We, along with, I dare say, much of rugby media, are going to do our own little live show on Thursday for the Lion selection. Just figure why not, we're both free, and we're going to go live. I suppose the live stream for the main show is going to go live at 11:45. We'll probably go live 11:30. Yeah. Obviously we'll have gone over our predictions and everything, but sure, listen, we'll take questions off you guys, we'll riff, we'll talk about the Lion selection, and then whenever the selection comes out, we'll give our sort of authentic reactions and analysis of why they've gone with who and who was unlucky to miss out, and all of that sort of dramatic stuff that happens on Lions Day, and we'll do our best not to do it in sort of angry meltdown mode like can happen on these selection days. We'll do our best to be even-headed.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, but no promises. But as always as well, if you do enjoy the content, please do subscribe. It does help the channel out a lot. Likewise, smash the like button, the bell button, so you get notified, and drop a comment as well. We do enjoy a bit of discourse regarding the rugby down in our comments thread, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Why are our Lion selections wrong? Tell us that.
Tell us all, yes.
But listen, on that note, and without any further ado, we're going to pivot on and we're going to look ahead to the big story of the week, what everyone is sort of waiting to hear, which is the Lion squad, Gatland's Lion squad. Yeah. He's going to. It's kind of different this year in that I'm trying to remember. Usually, I think they have the captain named before the squad. Yeah. I think they've done that a few times, but the captain is being named at the press conference, and then the whole squad is going to be announced as well.
Probably in alphabetical order. Usually.
Oh, they will, to disguise all the stuff. Yeah. They should name it just by position and get everyone on board instantly, but no, they name them in alphabetical order, so then you're scrambling your head going, wait, have they missed this guy? Yeah. All of that stuff, yeah. Gatland's going live 11:45 this Tuesday to talk all things Lions, to name his squad, and I think all fans on these two islands of Ireland and Britain anyway are certainly on tenterhooks waiting to see who gets the call up, who misses out. Yeah. All the fans are sort of lobbying for their options, and we'll go through the squad in due course, but just to start with the initial news, which will be who will be the Lions captain.
Well, there's it's kind of in my eyes a 2-horse race, but in the bookies' eyes there are a few other horses out there. We have the front runner with the best odds according to Odds Checker. That's our one, is Alan Wynne Jones at 4-11, which is pretty nearly nailed on, but for the presence of Amaro Itoje at 9-4. So those two are really like even whichever one's captain, they're front runners for the Test shirts either way, the pair of them. And like then beyond that, you have Stuart Hogg 11-1, a bit less likely. He is the Scottish captain. Owen Farrell, according to things, 20-1. Owen Farrell to be Lions captain.
Faz is England captain. Is
he
not?
Is, yeah.
I
would still call it a dubious decision to make if they do go that way. Ken Owens at 28-1, Johnny Sexton 50-1, 51-1 or so.
There's Ireland captain at 51-1,
yeah,
and Faz at 20-1. Yeah, I mean those are sort of the main options. Each of the Test captains. I just think of the sort of peripheral options that aren't Alan Wynne or Itoje. You know, Farrell is obviously on the periphery of the squad. Personally, I think he goes just because of his acumen at inside centre and obviously his past with the Lions. But you know, he's very much on the fringes. Ken Owens, you know, no disrespect to the man, but Alan Wynne-Jones is his leader. It seems weird that you wouldn't make him captain.
Yeah.
Johnny Sexton, issues being on the periphery of the squad as well, might not go, might not start. Unlikely, despite being Ireland captain. Also, just not a great captain, really.
Yeah,
truly, it's not really his.
Yeah.
His
forte.
main forte.
I would level the same criticism at Faz, to be honest. I think they're both pretty dialed in 10s who are sometimes a bit abrasive with the ref, particularly a French ref, which it might very well be. And through the language barrier, having a big wide-eyed Faz or Sexton go, whoa, blah, blah, blah. It's probably not the best look for a captain. You want a bit more of a wily soul, which is probably why you'd want Alan Wynne ultimately as the guy who's for master chat. Of all things ref chat.
And Hogg is interesting as well. He's also quite emotive, but the issue is sort of leading from fullback has its issues.
Yeah, well, it's going to be physical. It's going to be in the tight that you want these leaders probably because it's the setup. It's the Springboks you're facing.
Personally, I've never minded it. Like I've never. It's a nominal thing. The role itself is nominal. What happens on the pitch can be very much. There's a leadership group, and there's always going to be a leadership group. And actually making a 15 captain sort of puts the onus of you to give leadership roles to a few other heads.
Sure. Yeah.
And when you've got such experience and quality that the Lions have, like you'd want a brains trust of leaders, like really 4 or 5 guys at the spine of the team making decisions and talking over decisions. Yeah. So I don't think it's that big a deal. I actually think the biggest deal that it is sort of the off the field duties and all of that attention that comes with it. Like you're very much the ambassador for the squad. You're going to have more media to do all of that kind of peripheral stuff. And Alan Wynne-Jones obviously be very versed in that. But there's definitely a temptation for Itoje. Like Itoje's a superstar of the game. It would certainly be no small thing to have a first black Lions captain.
That's true. Yeah.
And there's probably quite possibly never been anyone more deserving in terms of his just.
That's a legit argument. Plus, there's probably an argument that he's the one who's nailed on to start at the very least all the tests if he remains fit.
He's such a leader on the field for all of his teams as well. Like what I love about Itoje is that when the team is down and out, he's the guy who'll come up with a play to keep you going and drag you back in. Yeah. And like there's a lot to be said for how he leads on the field as well, and giving him that title could sort of tip the I don't know, the juju scale or the kind of subjective scale in the Lions' favour a little bit. It would be like a nice story. I think he'd do a really good job. I think he'd be a great ambassador. But that said, Alan Wynne-Jones is very much the safe hands. He's done this before. He knows his shtick, and he's in he had a classic
Six Nations as well. So it will be one of them. Like I mean, there are other outside bets, outside punts where you're going like looking for the 250-1 shout, like Big Ian Henderson or someone for the Ulster captain. But it's like. He should go, but I don't know if he's in the test team.
Peter O'Mahony maybe if you're looking exclusively Irish. The Mish if you're looking at Scotland, but I don't know. Is the Mish club captain in Edinburgh?
No, he's not. That's why I think who is club captain now?
I'm not sure.
No, like these are all outside punts. I think it's going to be one of those top two. It's going to be one of that shortlist anyway, and it's likely one of Alan Wynne or Itoje. That seems to be a toss up between them, and they're both good
if leaks are to be believed, it'll be Alan Wynne, and just knowing Gatland the way we do. I would expect
err on the side of the Welsh.
Err on the side of Alan Wynne-Jones, his old lieutenant. Yeah, so I would suspect that Alan Wynne-Jones is the man.
I can't begrudge either. If he names either one of them, I'd be like, okay.
If you were making the call, obviously, just with the data you have now, you haven't spoken to any of the guys. It's all so subjective.
Yeah, it is subjective
from this distance.
From our seat. I don't know. I do think there's merit to what you say about the first Black Lions captain. I think it would be good, positive juju. I think Itoje does deserve it, but. Like again, you say Alan Wynne-Jones, I'm not going to argue with you. So that's kind of it. Like, it's going to be one of those two. I'd say probably Jones, but only slightly probably.
And no Stewie.
There will be Stewie. I think he'll be going, but I don't think he'll be captain. No.
Fair enough. And now we're going to pivot on, obviously, and just look at the squad itself. There's obviously loads to factor in here. What's interesting here, the first bit, that before we just go into the breakdown of each positions, is that there's this curiosity with regards to the amount of players. Last time I think they brought it was either 41 or 43, and this time they've been capped at 36.
Wow.
And the thinking is, well, you know, it's an 8-match tour instead of a 10-match tour. But I tell you what, I'm just going to read these
the schedule,
fixtures,
the turnaround,
the schedule, that I have here. So they have, it's actually a 9-game series, because there's a home game as well. It's 8-match tour, but a 9-game series really, if you look at it.
Yeah.
And so you have on the 26th of June, they have a game in Murrayfield against Japan, which will be from this Lions squad, this 36-man squad. So a week later, 7 days later, they got the Stormers. 4 days later, they got the South African Invitational team. 3 days later, the Sharks. 3 days after that, like the Sharks. Then 4 days later, South Africa A. Then 3 days later, the Vodacom Bulls.
Yeah.
Then another week, then there's a week gap, and then it's the Springboks, week gap, Springboks, week gap, Springboks. So it does kind of open up at the end. It's kind of week on week.
Yeah.
But
it's an intense turnaround.
There's 4 days. I guarantee you as well, just given the game time that the players have had, that like your Lucanio Ams and your Sia Khaleesi's will be playing for the Sharks in that game. They'll have a swing at the Lions in the Sharks jersey. I almost guarantee you they'll do that. Unless they're playing like the US that weekend or whatever their warm-up game is, or they want to be in camp. But even then, I'd say they'll release at least a good portion of their Springboks for those games, just to get them some high intense games ahead of the series.
Because they have been starved of that, and that's what that was why they were spearheading this Rainbow Cup idea, that they really wanted to mix. They were trying to push to make it happen. Didn't really happen the way they've intended. They're still playing derby games over and over again. So they'll want some exposure to some other rugby. So those are
tough games with really, really short turnarounds. And if you look at a 36-man squad, you're going to need to, like, you're going to have to field 23 in each one of those games. There, you don't have the 46 luxury. Yeah. So you're going to have guys playing at least some minutes 4 days apart.
Yeah.
So that's true. It's going to be a really, really tough period for those guys selected, and certainly there's going to be a premium on guys who are versatile, guys who can slot in different positions,
utility backs, utility front rowers,
utility back five kind of players,
back row / second row types, hybrid players,
hybrid players,
and fit young ones as well. You're going to want, it's going to be a relatively high attrition rate depending on what kind of style they want to go for as well. But you'd imagine it's going to be high energy and high paced in terms of just the tempo they want to bring. It's summer in terms of down here. It's going to be a relative summer thing. It is getting into autumn winter there over in South Africa, but it'll feel a bit hot anyway, just by European standards.
Altitude is its own thing as well.
Indeed.
So all of that will play into this for sure. So looking at the sort of makeup of the squad before you go into selecting it, you've got 36 to choose from, which is, for me, it's really, really tight. But in terms of the breakdown by position, looking at that turnaround, for me, and I think most people have come to the same conclusion, you're looking at somewhere around 20 forwards, 16 backs. You could go 21 and 15 if you wanted. Stretch the backs out a little more, especially if you want to, get some more back row talent in. That's understandable. But it's somewhere around 20 forwards and 16 backs with one leeway.
It's the likely split if 36 is to be believed.
Sorry, go on.
Which I was just saying we believe it is, and even within that, then you break it down into little subcategories of that. Like within those 20 forwards, you're talking 9 front rowers, 3 per position, 4 or 5 locks, and 6 or 7 back rowers, depending on your emphasis. Like that the ratio could shift depending on kind of what style they want to play. But I'd imagine back row by committee is something that the top teams have been doing and rotating them. Even the top club sides, top international sides, you do want multiple options that can slot in and out.
I think regardless of who's picked and who's not, it would be madness if they started with the same back row in each of the 3 tests. It's such an attritional position, you just don't get 3 high quality performances in 3 weeks out of a top back rower anymore. It's very rare that at the highest level of attrition, and when one of the Lions' great strengths is going to be their strength and depth, there's so much talent, it would be silly not to use that in the test matches. So versatile players, and with a mind to everybody who picks, could be playing a test. But 4 or 5 locks or 6 and 7 back rowers. That's either 5 and 6 or 4 and 7. But some of those guys are going to be able to play both.
That's you'd think.
Yeah, and in the back line then you're looking at about 3 scrum halves and 3 out halves. I think that's really necessary. I don't think you can do the 3 and 2 skimming just because there's like 4-day turnarounds.
They might do what was the Eddie Jones with the 2 scrum halves who play every single game. That's the other option.
Yeah, but with 3 and 4-day turnarounds, that's crazy.
Nuts. Yeah, it does seem nuts.
You've got to give guys a rest in there somewhere as well. So I think 3 scrum halves, 3 out halves, 4 centres, and 6 outside backs is kind of the main split you're looking at, with some scope for change of one or two of those positions. So that's sort of the breakup of the squad. If we go now and sort of pivot now to each position, we'll get sort of into the meat of this conversation. So, we'll go 1 to 15 as the usual way, the way we like to do, and
the way they should name the squads as well.
I love that.
I wish Gatland. I would love if on Thursday he sets the precedent and goes, right, squad time, Looseheads. Lists the Looseheads. Hookers. Lists the hookers. Wouldn't it be a simpler world if he did that instead of coming out with...
That's not the world we're living in. Arne Aronson all the way to Zinzan Zola. Xander Fagerson,
so we will try and preface that. We will start with the Looseheads, of which there are several contenders. It's aligned to our team of the tournament conversation from the Six Nations, because that was the main audition for it. Obviously there's club footy as well that'll inform
one or two
these decisions,
but
a lot of it will be Six Nations form. And then just in terms of contenders from each country, we'll start with Scotland. They have Rory Sutherland is their main man. He is touch and go with that shoulder injury he picked up, so it's kind of whether he'll be fit. There is Ollie Kebble and Jamie Batty as well, but I think they are just slightly less likely because they weren't in the position that Sutherland was or doing the job that he was. Then from England you have obviously Mako Vunipola, you have Ellis Genge, and you have Benno Obano, 3 really high quality young guys there as well, like a lot of heft there. In Wales you had Wyn Jones, the main one, Rodri Jones in behind him, and from Ireland I guess you have Cian Healy, Dave Kilcoyne and Ed Byrne just behind them. Those are very good players, one and all. To be honest, it's a nice thing to be selecting from such a high quality field. But we reckon 3 are probably going to have to go.
3 are going to go, and if you're narrowing the nominees, like I do like Ollie Kebble, I like Dave Kilcoyne, but
I think they're
realistically
back in the
you're looking at sort of the main starters from each of the countries. Wyn Jones, one of the players of the Six Nations. Rory Sutherland, explosive scrummager who had like a good Six Nations but not as good as he was last year. Cian Healy, who's been in fine fettle, and then for me there's 2 contenders from England, Mako Vunipola and Ellis Genge, who've both been in very fine form, and so it's really a question in my mind of picking 3 from those 5.
Well, I think in terms of scrummaging acumen is what you're going to have to be looking at as well, like a
little bit. Franz Malherbe is probably your opponent. He's a massive unit. He's scrumming really well.
It's a big Springbok scrum that you're up against, and to be honest, Mako didn't go well the last time he was faced with that beast as well. Like I would, of the 2 Englishmen, I would think Ellis Genge is probably a favourable option in terms of just scrummaging. Wyn Jones, I think, kind of has to go for his playmaking, but I would fear for him at scrum time. I'd like to have the option, if you're starting with Wyn Jones, of hauling him out of there for a guy who's
an elite scrummager.
Like I'd think Cian Healy should go. Just on his scrummaging showings this year alone.
I'm 100% with you on that,
Like he doesn't have a full 80 in him, but what he does have is 40 really good scrummaging minutes, and he'll stand up.
Last week, I mean, there's endless examples this year with Cian Healy. It's been so under the radar, but that left side of the Irish scrum was a weapon. He did Weenie Antonio some damage. He did Weenie Antonio some damage with Will Skelton at the weekend. I know La Rochelle beat Leinster, and we'll talk about that later. It's very traumatic, but Cian Healy during that first half really handled that colossal left side of the La Rochelle scrum, popped up Antonio a couple of times and had him sort of staggered and not himself. And it was only really in the second half then when the La Rochelle pack managed to get on top, certainly on that side of the scrum. He dominated the Welsh scrum at the Six Nations, the French scrum. I'm struggling to remember how the English-Ireland scrum went against England. I think it was neutral enough. But against France and against Wales, he was on top. Against Scotland, he was on top. He's basically bested every tighthead he's come up against this season.
And I am fully prepared for him to be overlooked and to not go.
Well, that's always the crack, isn't it? But
I think they might pick Mako, and I don't think they should. That's what I'm thinking. I think they're probably going to go Mako, Genge, Wyn Jones. I think that's the probable 3.
And leave Sutherland behind as well.
Sutherland and Cian Healy behind, and then maybe struggle at scrum time.
I mean, I would go Healy, Jones, Genge, I think, as you say, and then that's really harsh on Sutherland. If Sutherland can get back to full fitness,
Sutherland's injury was what killed him. And much like we saw in that Rainbow Cup, George Ford. We'll talk about the centres later, but or not George George.
I'm not sure who you're talking about.
I'm talking about Oh my god, I'm completely blanking on this. Number 13 for West, George.
George North.
North, yeah,
limping
off
George
injury.
North.
Yeah, completely blanked on the surname there for a second.
George
but like in terms of the injury, he limped off the field in the first Rainbow Cup fixture. Fantastic player. But then similarly, Rory Sutherland's injury, that shoulder injury, the manner of it, the timing of it, it was the end of that Six Nations. So I think it'll just be too soon in terms of rehab if you're bringing a scrummaging Loosehead, which is a shame because he was definitely in the mix.
He was, and he's a very similar player to Cian Healy in that the primary he's a very aggressive scrummager, and I think he was in line to oust Cian Healy in that role. But Healy's form has been better, even shoulder injury aside. Healy's been great, so I would very much, I know it's patriotic, but I would opt on the side of Healy. But those are the kind of ones in the mix, and those are our three, and obviously who we think as well with Mako. Moving on to the hookers.
It's also a high quality shortlist that you have here in terms of, well, Wales have one nominee, but he's a bloody good one. He's Ken Owens, the sheriff. From Ireland, it was kind of hooker by committee. You had Rob Herring and Ronan Kelleher kind of sharing the jersey throughout the tournament.
The starting jerseys.
Then in England, obviously, you have Luke Cowan-Dickie and Jamie George, that really powerful kind of duo that they two have. And similarly in Scotland, another great duo that was discovered only this year was George Turner and Dave Cherry, two fantastic hookers that weren't really getting a look in prior, but had a brilliant tournament.
In the absence of McAnally and indeed Fraser Brown, the two of them stepped up and were excellent, Turner and Cherry. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Turner in particular. I know Cherry came in late and had a couple of tries. Turner was very hot at the start of the tournament and started to cool off towards the end. I mean, to be honest, I admired both of their performances, but I don't quite think they're at the very, very top Lions level, especially when you compare them to the other candidates. Rob Herring as well, just no form for me.
Even the Ulster showing it to the weekend wasn't great either. True. I think comparatively, I think Kelleher should be ahead of him in the pecking order in terms
100%.
of from the Irish camp. I think if there's one hooker going, it should be Kelleher, the young bolter.
I think there's 4 nominees. I think the bookies have it, it'll be George, Cowan-Dickie and Ken Owens. And then for me, Kelleher is the potential bolter. And I personally, I would go with Kelleher. I like the idea of speed as an antidote to what the Springboks bring, even in the forwards. I like the idea of dynamic guys who carry well. Kelleher fits that mould. He's technically an excellent scrummager. He's really useful in the line-out maul context. But his carry game is explosive, and I've yet to see him. He also has a jackal game. I've yet to see him really phased. Obviously, this is a level above anything you'll have played before, a fit and firing Springboks. But he's a very exciting player.
He was a member of that Irish pack that was so mighty and impressive during the whole Six Nations as well, in terms of just dynamism and work rate, and then kind of dominance in terms of their display. They got their part right from an Irish point of view. It was just not clinical off the back of it. I wouldn't mind seeing him again. I'm prepared to see him miss out. I think they will bring Owens. I think they will bring the 2 English lads, even though I to be honest, Cowan-Dickie's form was one of the worst I've seen for one of the worst tournaments I've seen from him in an England jersey. He's always been very impressive.
I think the worst. He was almost like petulant at times. He just didn't seem himself. Jamie George, by contrast, there's been a lot of talk about the Saris and their lack of form or worries around there. For me, he booked the trend.
He played better than his opposite man in there. That's true.
He's first name on the
he's big and hefty,
list
and
for me.
He's hard nosed and experienced, and
a passer of the ball. He's a really good guy to put in like some of those screens. I think of actually him busting through. Was it him who got that try against the All Blacks in the second test when they gave that little short ball? When Sexton gave that little short ball, it was him.
It was him.
Sorry,
through.
Your pause there was worrying me, but he has Lions pedigree. He can throw a screen pass. He can play distribution. He can play carry. He's good brain,
which is what you're going to want to see. Like in terms of just we'll get like these decisions will be informed by like combinations that you want to have in mind and all of that,
and the way you want to play the Springboks.
That's kind of what's informed about it. There was a great clip of I think it was a documentary behind the scenes 12 years ago, the last time they were in South Africa, and it was McGeechan who was leading that tour at the time, and there was a debate about whether to pick Croft or Stephen Ferris at the time, Tom Croft or Stephen Ferris, both very fine sixes, both in flying form but very different, and they ended up erring on the side of Croft because pace. And I didn't hate the decision at all. Now ultimately they ended up losing the series, but I don't think that's what you decided about
Croft played well.
Yeah, Croft played really well, and it was a good insight into the mindset. It's like, are we going there to try and pick the biggest possible players from these 4 nations to try and go toe to toe with the Springboks at their game? No, you shouldn't be. You should be trying to be the quicker team, the more
certainly
dynamic team.
And the good thing about Jamie George is that he fits both molds, because obviously you will need a bit of size.
Oh, you'll need a scrum just to come in the front row.
And on D, you can't really speed your way around them on D. Like if Eben Etzebeth is coming at you off 9, you're going to have to deal with that, and you are going to need some enforcers in there to help you do that. And it's important to get the balance right.
I sidestepped Etzebeth 3 times. Unfortunately, he was in possession all 3 of them.
Yeah, indeed. So we've Ken Owens, I think, going for sure. One of the leaders, one of the on the short list for captain. Really good breakdown player, really wily. I think he had a great game when the Springboks played the Wales in the World Cup
as well. Yeah,
I mean, he's highly rated, and with good reason. He's a very, very smart operator and good footballer as well. Yeah. Good in the open field himself. And then for me, the bolter is Kelleher over Cowan-Dickie. I'd understand if they didn't go for it. Listen, Cowan-Dickie's got way more experience. He's got way more credit in the bank. He's been playing Test rugby for years. But Kelleher's the kind of guy, and I know there's a theme here of me going with dynamic Irish forwards and trying to chuck them in as bolters. We are biased, you can call us that. We are Irish, and we have our issues there. But I promise you I will not be as generous to the Irish backs when we get there.
Indeed.
I think our forward pack was one of the best in the Six Nations, and our backs let us down consistently. So that's kind of my thinking as well. I think our forward pack's been excellent, and Kelleher's a big part of that. So personally, Kelleher over Cowan-Dickie, probability Cowan-Dickie over Kelleher.
I think so, And unlucky on the Scots to be missing out in that reckoning as well.
Because the
pair of them were brilliant as well. So and to be fair, they will have to be kind of thereabouts, because it's only a 36-man squad, and as you pointed out with the turnaround, like, injuries will happen, so there will be call-ups as well. It's very possible that those 3 go, but then it could be Kelleher starting the first test match if things go
who
all
knows,
kinds of mad.
Turner and Cherry on retainer. Would you hate to see Turner named in the squad? Would it shock you? Yeah,
no, I wouldn't. I think, to be honest, I think that is one of the higher quality shortlists that you'll see. I think every single one of the players we named there are really, really good. So that's just
capable of doing
these are the headaches that Lions selections bring up, because you're omitting great players all the time when you're selecting the Lions squad. Anyway, with that, we will move on to a huge debate in terms of these arguably the most important 3 players to go on tour, Tightheads to face the Springboks. You're going to have to bring at least 3 of them. And in terms of candidates, from Ireland, you're talking Tadhg Furlong, Andrew Porter. From England, you're talking Kyle Sinclair, Will Stewart, Harry Williams. From Wales, Thomas Francis and Leon Brown. And from Scotland, you have Xander Fagerson, Nell, and Simon Bergen. A lot of good quality Tightheads there. You're going to have to bring at least 3. One of them is already picked in my mind. I think Tadhg Furlong is going.
For me too.
I think Sinclair is going.
I think those jerseys are as secure as can be, and I think it would be very impressive for anybody else, barring injury, to break their way into the starting test team.
I think
Sinclair's very good scrummager. He's really getting on. He also has the extra things in the loose. He can throw a pass just like Jamie George. He's good reading of the screenplay.
Furlong.
And Furlong is magnificent. He's brilliant in the open field. He did get bumped off for the first time I've ever seen in his career. He got bumped off by Will Skelton at the weekend. Finally ran into a bigger man, but he's bigger than most men, and he's just Tadhg Furlong is kind of blanket you can rely on to lock down a tough side of the scrum, even against a guy like Kitsoff, where Dan Cole was made a mug of.
Was a terrible
indeed. And certainly the Lions won't have that issue off their bench. But the third option is interesting. Porter apparently is the favourite.
It's down to versatility. In terms of in theory he can switch and play loosehead as well. Now, for all that is discussed and it comes up in Irish media circles, I can't remember him playing at loosehead. It's been a while. Since he's done that
8 years.
So it seems dubious to just be saying, oh, he can switch, because it's like, well, he can try and switch anyway. Maybe any of them can switch and then be found out.
I mean, it's like it really is using the whole other half of your body in terms of like the dynamic work that's being done is by your left arm. If you're a righty and you're on the tighthead side the whole time, I can't imagine the switch to working with your left arm is that easy. I don't really rate that, and I think that there's definitely a case for not going with Porter. He's good in the loose. He's a very good jackal threat. There's a lot to him you like. I've just seen him be crushed at the scrum. I've seen Mako Hunapola do a job on him. I'm not totally convinced about his scrummaging prowess, especially like when you're just up against the likes of Kitsoff, who just ruthlessly expose any weakness that's in there. I definitely see a scenario where Porter gets munched in the scrum, and that's a real problem. Like you could even argue like someone like Xander Fagerson, even WP Nell, And Harry Williams is the other one who didn't get much test time, but is a lock at the scrum most of the time. I think those three for me are the ones that jump out as like scrum security first.
Yeah.
That's what, from a third choice tight head, I'm not looking for razzle dazzle. I'm looking for scrummaging security. If the shit hits the fan, this guy's going to come in and there's not going to be a problem at the scrum.
Yeah,
that's what you want.
That's what you want.
Nell is an argument.
Nell is an argument, although there is a counter argument that very often South Africans who don't play for the Springboks don't perform that well when they face the mighty Springboks.
You've seen that once or twice. All right,
at least once or twice. I see it all the time. Anytime a South African who's playing for Italy or somewhere turns up against them, they're the ones. Or even our own CJ Stander will go back and give away a red card. Over there. Yeah, like it's enough to be called a trend.
Is that going to be counted against Duhan van der Merwe and CJ himself again in your mind?
It might be in my mind anyway. I don't know if it will be in Gatland's. I don't know. It's a pet theory of mine, but it does play out that way a lot. It's very, very rare that I see a South African play well against the Springboks.
Yeah, didn't Richard Strauss have a decent game against them?
He had a decent game for Ireland, but exception rather than rule. So I would worry about and the fact that Scotland didn't give him his fair shake. I do think he is the best. I would worry about Xander. In fact, I wouldn't bring Xander just because of how dodgy he was against the French scrum and how dodgy he was against many a scrum in terms of going down. Even the Welsh scrum, he gave away a penalty in the first minute of that game.
He is a good scrummager, but he had this thing in the Six Nations where the first scrum of the game
was always a penalty.
He was
against
slipping
him.
and giving up a pen. That's
and
right.
Also like the Six Nations scrummaging, as good as it is, like this is another level. This is the Springboks, and what's a tight head for? Like again, I don't want to be seeing the razzle dazzle. It's like Xander can throw a good pass. Like, I don't really care. He's going to be scrummaging against the Springboks.
Yeah, that's my theory. Certainly on third choice tight head, that's all you need. So on that basis, who do you reckon? Who do you reckon they'll go for? And then who do you think should go?
I reckon they'll go for Border, for the versatility option, in terms of just an extra option at Loosehead as well. In terms of midweek games, they might play him at Loosehead in midweek kind of thing. I don't know.
If you're bringing three
I don't know.
Looseheads,
I think they will bring him just for his versatility. I don't know. I wouldn't hate to see Harry Williams go because, as you say, he's been a rock, but I think he won't be featured. He just hasn't played any test rugby, and I'm not convinced by Will Stewart, to be honest. So I think nearly by default it'll be Porter, nearly. But
I'm not as down on Xander as you are, although I do understand your concerns.
Well, he got himself red. He didn't have a great showing. Got himself red carded. Missed the rest of the tournament. Came back and didn't have a great showing. So.
Yeah, I kind of get. I don't think he's been as bad as all that. He's had good moments in the Six Nations as well. But Nell is a favourite of mine. I personally, like, if I was allowed to wave the wand, I might take the punt on Nell just because I really back him to lock down a scrum.
He is a very fine scrummager.
He's a very fine scrummager. He's kind of a short enough guy though as well, so you'd be somewhat fearful. But I've never seen him really rock to the scrum. He's been awesome every time he's been asked.
He's also the only guy to give Cian Healy trouble all season long.
That's right. Yeah, a very technical scrummager. Yeah, so I think Nell might be my bolter. That's a complete bolter. Even Scott's be like, what? Because he hasn't even been featured. But like I like his acumen at the scrum, which is what it's all about.
It is like jobs 1 through 10 for a tight head is can he lock down a scrum? Like it doesn't matter beyond that at all.
It does to some extent,
but it like ask a Safa about it, and it's like,
what's the point? You've all the flashy stuff in the world. If you're getting monstered by kits off every time you scrum down, there's no point. You're never going to be a net positive.
Indeed, exactly. It's your first primary role as a tight head, and it might be the most important position for the Lions is just having that guy at tight head who can lock it down. It looks like it'll be Furlong, but if he's struggling, they'll need to be able to haul him out there and bring on Sinclair as well. Like
those are the top two, I think, without question.
Yeah. So it's a debate then as to who goes with them, but they will bring 3 because it is that attritional.
And we didn't really make mention of Thomas Francis or Leon Brown, but I don't think either did well enough to deserve mention really.
No, I would be they were very much holding it together for Wales' scrum against and at times not. And the scrum they'll be facing this time will be more mighty, so I would worry about them. But we will pivot on to the engine room, which will also be important in terms of set piece and scrum time. You're talking line out leaders, you're talking potential captains. Sure, the 2 top nominees are both in that position, but just going through the candidates, you have obviously from England you have Maro Itoje, Johnny Hill and Charlie Ewells as well, 2 other big men. From Ireland you have your Tadhg Byrne, James Ryan, Ian Henderson, Ryan Baird. From Scotland you had a fair few of Scott Cummings, Johnny Gray, Sam Skinner, Grant Gilchrist, Richie Gray. And then from Wales as well, Adam Beard, very impressive this year, Corey Hill, Alan Wynne-Jones and Jake Ball. So a lot of locks to be listing.
And I think you're bringing at least you're probably bringing, not 4 or 5 nominal locks, but 5 guys certainly who can play lock.
Yeah, indeed. So that's where you have your kind of like the likes of Ryan Baird, or even Sam Skinner has slotted in. Or
more's the point, I think.
Charlie Ewells plays in the back row sometimes.
I'm not sure any of those will go, but more's the point, like Ty Byrne down as a lock. He might be selected as a lock and play mostly at 6.
Yeah.
I think, like, in terms of options, you're looking at Itoje, by the way, has played 6 as well, but Itoje and Alan Wynne-Jones. Alan Wynne-Jones likely to be captain. Itoje the only guy pushing him. Itoje's truly elite, and he will absolutely be on the plane, if not captain. Likewise, Alan Wynne-Jones. And then you're looking at an interesting selection of ideas. I think Tadhg Byrne was in the form of his life. I think he's the style of back rower you want against the Springboks. He's truly world class, almost to a David Pocock fashion over the ball. Not quite, but almost. He's excellent over the ball, and he's wonderful in the loose. He's a great link up player, really quick as well. So I prefer him as a back row to a lock, especially against the Springboks.
Certainly wouldn't pick him at lock against those Safa locks.
Yeah, but he's the kind of guy who'll go as a lock and could play in the back rows in the test team, but crucially can play lock against South Africa Invitational or whoever the hell they're playing.
Indeed,
on a 3-day turnaround. He can play lock in those games. So I think those 3 are certs, and then you're looking at really 2 extras from that big list.
I don't know which Scot you would bring, because they started and finished the tournament with different lock
Johnny
combos.
Gray has the best chance.
Johnny Gray probably should go.
Been good for Exeter.
Yeah. I mean, I think he has a better shout than our own James Ryan, who would have been a nailed on guy this time last year, but in terms of the year's form, he just hasn't shown it.
I kind of sometimes harken back to 2018 when he was bursting on the scene, and he went through that really long period of this guy's never lost a game of professional rugby. Like, there was real buzz about him in Ireland, like he was going to be sort of our answer to Itoje, and he was going to have that like extra engine. He's had a couple of injuries here and there, and he's been beaten up 1 or 2 times in big test games, and he's just not quite the same force. He's not really got the dexterity of like a long passing game. I don't know if I'd properly trust him in a distribution role on a screen. He tends to truck it up a lot. He tends to kind of carry hard into someone's shoulder, and while he does get the best of the carry most of the time, I don't think he's been truly elite. He doesn't call lineouts for Ireland. I think there's just one too many hiccups with James Ryan, down to getting like absolutely bested by Will Skelton at the weekend in terms of his position, just outshone and outmatched firmly and thoroughly by a big Eben Etzebeth-like figure.
Indeed.
I just don't know if I trust James Ryan, and that's hand on heart. Like, for me, Ireland's best nominee is Big Ian Henderson, who's very similar to Safa Locks in the way he goes about
I
things.
think he should likely go because of that. And then the other idea of a bolter is Ryan Baird. He's a bit on the periphery, but it's like he's another guy who's a 6/lock.
Also struggled with Skelton.
He only came in off the bench to play. But those got kind of players for that. I think Tadhg Byrne is the one who will get the nod there in that regard.
What about Adam Beard?
Henderson. That's the other one. Yeah, like, does Beard slot into the back row? He had a fabulous Six Nations. I just don't know if you'd trust to pick him, because ultimately you're probably going Alan Wynne and Itoje, and then you're going to be like,
you need a big enforcer for sure. So you need a Johnny Gray. You possibly need a Johnny Gray and a Big Ian Henderson.
That might be that might be where they go. Is just heft.
Beard is
it
the
would have
next
been Johnny
one.
Hill. Johnny Hill, I think, actually did himself a disservice this season as well, because he ended up losing the jersey for England. He started with the jersey, didn't impress. Then Ewells came in. So I think big Johnny Hill might be unfortunate and miss out as well. There are other Scottish guys there who played really, really well. Scott Cummings as well, and Sam Skinner did a great job. But I think they are just
I never rated Scott Cummings' form. Well, actually, that's really harsh. He had some great games at the start of the tournament, and so too did Johnny Gray. That Cummins, I think, got injured somewhere along the line as well, but they did really fade against that Irish pack. Like, for me, I would go with Ian Henderson, and I possibly chuck Adam Beard in there. I am wondering aloud, like, whether it's too slight then. Like, whether you've got too many sort of rangy guys, because I've obviously got Tadhg Byrne. Alan Wynne-Jones is an excellent line-out aficionado, and he's a wonderful thinker on the game, but he's not that raw power. So, like, if Itoje goes down, is it just Ian Henderson and no real big power guy to bring off the bench? Maybe you need Henderson and Gray, so maybe that's what you go with. But I think Adam Beard is super lucky to miss out, and I would be very close to selecting Adam Beard myself. I'd certainly have him on first reserve. A couple of other guys is like, I don't know. To be honest with you, I think that's kind of the main of it. I don't know who you'd have on extra retainer. James Ryan would be on extra reserve,
I guess. When someone goes down.
And James Ryan is one of the bookies' favourites to go.
Indeed,
a lot of people are talking about James Ryan, Alan Wynne-Jones, and Itoje are shoe-ins. I just haven't seen it from Ryan this year, really. I think Ian Henderson was better than him at the Six Nations.
He was.
And that should play in.
Indeed, it should be a factor because that Irish pack was so good, and Ryan was injured for a long period of it, so it was kind of... Yeah, it was Tadhg Byrne and Ian and Big Ian Henderson were doing a lot of work in terms of the rowing acumen there. I think it will likely be 5 of those with Tadhg Byrne.
With at least 1 or 2.
Yeah, guys like that who are rotatable, but the good 2 guys who are definite shoe-ins, I think, are Alan Wynne and Atoji. Beyond that, it's a pick and mix. Tadhg Byrne, I think, will go either as he may go as a back rower, you don't know, but he will be on the plane. I would be willing to put money on.
Absolutely. And now we have
speaking of the back row,
real Sophie's choice stuff going on at the back row. I think you're selecting on top of Tadhg Byrne, who we have in there, you're selecting 6. So it's possibly going to be 7, but like that's only if you count Tadhg Byrne or Ian Henderson as a back rower. So I think 6 out and out back rowers of these guys. And so obviously you've got from Welsh candidates, you've got Josh Navidi and Justin Tipperick and Toby Faletau, all of whom could go. Aaron Wainwright and James Botham on the periphery. For Ireland, CJ Stander, unquestionably. Tadhg Byrne, we've in there. Will Connors, Jack Conan, Rhys Ruddock, Peter O'Mahony. We really did have a lot of...
there was a fair bit of back row by committee. It may serve their chances in bad stead because
nobody was...
Connors and Josh van der Fleer both had fantastic performances, total 7 performances in that Six Nations campaign.
Connors is kind of injured now, so he's kind of out of the reckoning. Scotland, obviously Hamish Watson, Jamie Ritchie, Matt Fagerson also had a fine tournament.
He did,
Nick Haining and Gary Graham also featured, but will likely not be involved. I think Gary Graham's still injured. For England, Tom Curry was the standout. He was absolutely brilliant. And then you've got Billy Vanapola, Mark Wilson, Ben Earl,
also
Courtney Laws unfortunately picked up an injury, and then obviously from Bolter's not involved in the Six Nations, you've got Sam Simmons, who everybody's talking about from Exeter. You've got Alex Dombrandt as a potential mad shout because he's been good for the Quins, but probably not as good as Sam Simmons and hasn't played. But there's a bit of buzz about him. And obviously Sam Underhill is back and playing for Bath, and he's featured in World Cup finals and shone in World Cup semi-finals against the All Blacks, and is a truly a wonderful player himself. He could easily go as well.
It is an absolute Sophie's choice. Do you bring I presume you bring Faletau, who's nominated for Player of the Year and is an out and out number 8, but then you have argument that Conan is playing as well as him in a different jersey.
Faletau has a lot of credit in the bank, and he has the trust of Gatland. He does. He played really well in New Zealand 4 years ago.
The other guy is Hamish Watson, another nominee for Player of the Six Nations, almost undoubtedly going. Tipperick, I think, should go because he's awesome.
No, Tipperick is the best footballer of them, and he's got that Tadhg Byrne quality to him.
It's also the ranginess and speed. You want guys like Tipperick and Faletau and Conan, guys like rangy footballers out in the wide channels. That's what you want your back row to be about, pulling the Springboks this way.
And a couple of enforcers as well.
Yeah, indeed, which is where you get into the CJ debate versus Curry versus I don't know who would the other option be. Mark Wilson, but geez, no, it's not going to be Wilson.
Personally, on form, the ones that would jump out, I think Hamish Watson, on paper there's an element of isn't this a guy who's very much just loves to run at the contact, going up against guys who can handle that, and I definitely get that concern, and there's scope for, if he doesn't go well, bringing someone else in like a Tipperick, but his form is just undeniable. He's relentlessly physical. He goes forward in the contact. He actually picks some sharp lines. Passing game's improving, and then what has him standing out also is that defence, that jackal ability. He's tremendous in that area, and is just a real awesome playmaker. One of the form back rows in the world, and I think he's definitely there. I think Tom Curry for England was probably their best player. He was everywhere. Outstanding footballer, really physical as well, punches above his weight just like Mish does. Great tackler, great nuts and bolts player, and also really good in the screen action and makes good line breaks and links up, and good offensive instincts as well for a back rower. So those two for sure. I think then you're looking at the Welsh options. I think Faletau, certainly, that's 3 of your 6 right there. Tipperick for me goes, and then you have a couple of others to choose. You've got 4 there, and then you have a couple of others to choose, and then it gets interesting, doesn't it? I don't mind the idea of Jack Conan. I think his form, he might have done enough in terms of his form. He outplayed England. He was absolutely brilliant in that game. He changed Ireland's way of playing almost individually. I know Ireland shifted as well, but him coming back into that team, playing in the wide channels distribution option.
It was a proper number 8.
The hands for that Earl's try when he flicked it back in.
And even the fact that he was hanging out on the wing ready to poach for his own try that he grabbed. Himself and Faletau are the 2 standout number 8s in terms
Well,
of
what about
just
Billy
number
V
8s.
and Sam Simmons?
Yeah, see, this is it. Billy V and Sam Simmons might be in with a better shout than poor young Conan, because I think just in pedigree alone, Billy V, I would be so
up and down, isn't it? Like,
well, it's tough to bring him because, like, not only is he not in form, but the last time he faced the Springbok side, he was beat to a pulp and ended up going off. And the last time we saw him in an international context, he got beaten up by CJ Stander and then ultimately knocked out, granted by an illegal challenge.
Harsh to blame that KO.
No, I know, but it's like in terms of what he's shown this season, and then going back to the World Cup final.
Excellent game against France, didn't he? And then that was the surprise that he didn't really kick on against Ireland.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, considering Faletau has been nominated for Player of the Six Nations, and then you have a guy like Conan who's at number 8 in better form, and you have the Sam Simmons debate as well. Although I don't know if Sam Simmons has done enough in recent times. Certainly the showing against Leinster, where he was absolutely kind of bottled up.
And Leon the week before, I think his Champions Cup form, given that you can't see him in a test context, the last 2 games he played, just like I was watching him sort of eager to see, because I watch a bit of Premiership and I've seen his highlights, but I don't watch it as religiously as I'd watch the European stuff.
Yeah.
And I was watching him with a keen eye, and he didn't really deliver in those games, and I think that'll be enough to keep him out on this occasion. But certainly I think I think those 4 are very likely of Tipperick, Watson, Curry, and who's the other one I said? Faletau. And then the 2 others, very interesting. Like, Jack Conan's a pet of mine. I think Jamie Ritchie also could easily be involved. Like, I think there's a lot of guys really of a similar level, and you wouldn't hate to see any of them go. And I would include sort of your Billy V's and your Simmons and that. Like, they could easily rock up and deliver. CJ Stander's the other one who a lot of people are romantic about, career swan song going back to South Africa, and he would be a proper enforcer in there, a guy who's about hitting and stopping things. And I think defensively it's important to have that balance.
It is. You definitely need a hard-nosed guy.
And then Sam Underhill is the other one defensively who had a huge amount as well.
Like, these are the debates. I don't know. I think, like, it's funny because, like, the Irish back row did so well, but none of them really individually did. It was a back row by committee kind of thing, so I don't know if they're standing out that much.
I'll tell you what the bookies say. The bookies say Hamish Watson, Tom Curry, those are the ones we said, Justin Tipperick, Toby Faletau, and then their 2 extras are Josh Navidi and CJ Stander.
See, I don't know about that. I just don't know about that. Like, the Welsh back row, as impressive as it can be, like, they were bullied a lot of the time and were more clinical with the less ball that they had. They weren't, like, dominating games.
And Navidi is great as well.
Navidi is great as well, and he is the kind of quick, rangy guy that you do want to be facing the Springboks. I don't know. Is he a better option at 7 than, like, the little turbo bunny Josh van der Fleer? You know, I don't know.
Well, for me, your next best 7 is Sam Underhill.
Sam Underhill as well, playing brilliant. He is just back, but he's the guy who played really well. And in terms of going back to that World Cup final, like, Tom Curry kind of did the disappearing act, same as Billy V, and it was only Sam Underhill who was game in that game for the fight and really did put his hand up. It wasn't enough, but he was very impressive. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think it's a toss up. I think they're really high quality headaches. I'm not sure what Gatland's thinking is going to be on it. Will he end up bringing CJ for that hard hitting thing? Will he end up omitting CJ for that rangy quick thing?
When you want to balance, you do have Tyburn, you do have Justin Tipperick, and then you have, like, Curry and you have Faletau as well, and then you have Curry and Watson as your kind of enforcers. Personally, like, CJ's been great this year. I think I'd probably go with my 2 extras on top of our first 4 of Mish, Curry, Tipperick and Faletau. I would go with Underhill. I think Underhill is elite, properly elite, possibly a cut above the rest. And then with my last one, I would totally biasly chuck in Conan just because I really rate his form. And I know Leinster were beaten by La Rochelle, but actually I just thought system-wise they just didn't put Conan in the right places. The man needs to be wide, you need to put him in space.
Same channel as Faletau. He's an out-and-out number 8, same as Faletau.
Yeah, you need to work screens in to get the best out of him. And even in his limited capacity, you could just see there was a little something extra when he touched the ball. Even against those big La Rochelle forwards, he always carried with more dynamism than the rest. Yeah. And I just really like him. There's been talk about Caelan Daragh from this coaching ticket, but I don't think there's a prayer that Conan gets in the plane. He's just a pet of mine, I think they'd probably go with CJ Stander and maybe Underhill as well. Although Jamie Ritchie you could see easily as well.
Yeah, those are good options. Jeez, it's an absolute headache of the
so many
thing.
names, but
whoever is named, you're guaranteed at least one of them will go down injured from the attritional rate of it, and then someone else will be called up. I would pretty much guarantee that now pre-tour.
Yeah, and I would definitely not hate it if Jamie Ritchie went, if Underhill went instead of Conan. Absolutely. I like even if Billy V or Sam Simmons gets the nod, if like or some bolter like Ben Earl, like they all have the potential to rise to the occasion.
They do,
and it's very, very tough to know at this stage who'll flop and who'll
what combination will work as well. Because you do want it's very much when they're in their own country, they know the system that they're playing in, and they all kind of divide the work that way. That's kind of what's interesting about the Lions, is how will those new kind of partnerships form, and what relationship will you see with the Welsh guys and the Scottish guys in the back row. It remains to be seen, but I think all those four that you listed as the main front runners, I think they are definitely going, and then it's on the whims of Gatland which two or potentially more he wants to bring with him, depending if he wants to put Tyg Byrne down as a back rower and bring a different hefty lock. That could change things as well, but those four cert. Outside of that, Sophie's choice.
Yeah, it's tough for sure. Listen, we're going to move on. Obviously that was the pack, the main bulk, the 20, and on account of this 36-man squad, things do really, really tighten up in this back line, and the decisions get way more interesting. I think the schedule necessitates 3 scrum halves and 3 out halves, so starting there and looking at the candidates, first of all, for scrum half, Wales is a fun one. They've got loads of different scrum halves who all play very similar games and do so very effectively. Gareth Davis, Thomas Williams, Kieran Hardy, Lloyd Williams. Then from Ireland, obviously Conor Murray seems favoured to get in and get the jersey at this point. Gibson Park also played, but he hasn't featured. He's been injured, so he's unlikely. And then obviously Cooney, there's been a bit of hype about despite not playing any test rugby, but he also picked up an injury recently, which might count against him. And I think he was long odds to feature anyway. And then the young Craig Casey was also be a mad bolter who you love to see.
That would be a spanner thrown into works. I really doubt it. And from Scotland as well, you have Ali Price, the incumbent, the guy who they lean on. Outside of him, you have Scott Steele and George Horn. But I think if there's one Scot going in that position, it'll likely be Ali Price. Then from England, you have Ben Youngs and Dan Robson.
They were the only
two to feature. But then you have Ben Spencer, the actual best out of the scrum half they have, and then Danny Kerr even as an option. Beyond that, and even Wigglesworth was coming off the bench.
Ben Spencer's form is great. I think he's hurting a little bit because Bath are making him do so much that he's
kicking place kicks for them. He's not a place kicker, but
he's not being allowed to shine. Ben Youngs obviously has ruled himself out for personal reasons for the second Lions tour in a row, which is interesting, but obviously apparently unrelated. It has to do with his wife being pregnant. He doesn't want to be away. There's COVID concerns, all of that wrapped up into it. So Ben Young's apparently not featuring for the second Lions tour in a row, which does make things interesting. Like it makes the likelihood of an English bolter, a Danny Kerr or a Ben Spencer, very, very likely in my mind. Ali Price blows so hot and cold for me. Like he has in matches he blows hot and cold.
He does.
He has moments where he's brilliant, and then he has moments where he slows down and gets a little loose and his passes look a little laboured. It's not a criticism you could level at the Welsh guys.
No.
Personally, if you ask me, I think bringing Conor Murray and 2 Welsh guys might make sense. I think Conor Murray, Gareth Davis, and then like Thomas Williams is obviously the guy who's a bit of form. I loved Kieran Hardy's brief contribution.
It's funny because they are such similar players, but I actually thought Kieran Hardy's showing in that England game was the best showing of any Welsh scrummie in the whole tournament, but then he got injured, so he didn't have a run of games
suffered for a lack of minutes.
Indeed, so it's a tough one. What I would say is that you go back to that World Cup again, which is the only time, in terms of just looking at the potential opponents, it will be a different Springbok team. There have been a few guys who've emerged in the last year in terms of real bolters for them as well. But you look at the English showing against the Springboks and just how impotent they were and how bad Ben Youngs was in that game, and he wasn't able to be hauled off. Now obviously he's not an option, but when you look back to the semi-final, it was Wales who gave them a right rattle, and it was a very much a defensive chess match, which it may have to be for a time, but I certainly like the idea of having Welsh scrummies who can kind of move us around at a clip, because what I wouldn't like is to see Conor Murray the nailed on starter and just meaning that we're setting up to box kick into the air against them and be pretty slow, because he's just been slow.
Yeah, it's not how Murray's form was for the Lions, obviously 4 years ago. And you'd like to think that the new coaches can sort of beat that out of him, but that's a massive concern. His form isn't all that great, despite being favoured. Like for me, if I was picking a test team tomorrow, I would go Gareth Davis. So he's on the plane. I think Murray is on the plane. He's loads of credit in the bank. His ceiling is probably higher than all of the other scrum halves. And then you have a third choice, which could be, like in my mind, Thomas Williams is a decent shout. I think he drives a good clip. Kieran Hardy suffers for the lack of games. And then your other, like Ali Price, I don't think can go. I just don't trust him enough. And then I think your other options are the two English bolters. Kerr's been in great form, really quick scrum half. As a potential third choice, he could bring great energy to the sort of midweek games. And then potentially play well enough to get on the bench for a test game and really change the game. That is
true. There's definitely scope for that.
And Ben Spencer's the other one, who's a real good nuts and bolts scrum half, who probably hasn't got the test credit he deserves.
I in terms of if you're going inside the mind of Gatland, picking the likes of Ben Spencer and then maybe Dombrandt or someone, just pick a few of the English lads who Eddie Jones is ignoring and have them do really well for the Lions. It's the kind of little thing that he might do. If you're going with, as in Murray Davies as the rotation of your first two choice, and then a player to be named later, it could be any number of those guys. I wouldn't hate to see Ben Spencer go. I think he's very, very good. He hasn't really had the chance at test level, and give him a chance in the midweek team and see if he can force his way in there.
Personally I would go with
Thomas Williams.
I would toss up between Thomas Williams and Danny Kerr.
Danny Kerr can't box kick. That is a problem. You don't want to. No, obviously you don't want to box kick.
None of the Welsh scrum halves can box kick. No, Gareth Davis can't box kick effectively. If you need him to exit with his box kick, we saw this with Wales.
That is true. It's not as effective, and yet Danny Kerr is even worse than the Welsh scrummies at box kick. He's really bad at it. That's what's forced him out of the England shirt. Is that he just has a terrible boot. Not only is it not effective, it's actually calamitous.
I still don't know. I think
I think it will stand him again in poor stead. I think that fact will
help you run the ball. You got bigger. You got the likes of Bigger. Well, we'll talk about the tens in a moment. Bigger will be there. I don't hate leaning on others to kick.
No, I don't.
I certainly don't necessarily count it against a scrummy, especially when he's a utility scrummy coming in and
indeed. I wouldn't hate to see it. He definitely, as a guy off the bench, we've seen Danny Kerr kind of light it up. We've seen it for England in years gone by. He's definitely dynamic. That being said, so is Thomas Williams. It's a toss up. I think the two that are probably almost.
And Kerr's kicking game has improved. It
has improved.
I don't know. I think maybe Kerr, but Kerr or Thomas Williams. That's my thought. I maybe Kerr. The more I think about it, the more I like it. If you're going to go with Gareth Davis and Murray as your main two, and then I think Kerr is an interesting one because he might break into the top team, and then Thomas Williams is kind of first reserve. That's my thought.
Okay, that's.
And your Ben Spencer is obviously very unlucky to miss out there, but he's kind of a Conor Murray type. I'd almost bring him instead of Murray if nothing else. It's you maybe bring him if Murray was the one to get injured. He'd maybe first reserve then
straight in as a style Again, there are a lot of good players here that you can that are leaving out. I do agree with you on Ali Price. I know there's probably some Scots going absolutely nuts, but
he's up and down.
He's too up and down. It's he can be brilliant in a brief patch, but he can also give away a penalty at the death and lose a game for you. So it's I'd agree that he's a bit too hot and cold.
And sometimes he just slows right down as well. And Murray does that as well, and that's a problem.
Yeah, that will be a problem as well. Yeah, the Irishman in me would worry about Murray currently in terms of if he's going to be the starter, if all roads lead through him. Sure, we've seen it with Munster, watching that Munster performance against Leinster in the final, where it's they have Carberry at 10, that's exciting, except he's not going to see the ball at all because they're going to kick it in the air off 9, off Murray, of course, and that will be a problem.
Even when they're trying to move the ball, it's all off 9.
So you could be seeing a Lions team that's ooh, Murray, Finn Russell, what an exciting partnership. Oh wait, Finn's not seeing any of the ball because we're kicking it in the air. And that would be a problem.
No, I definitely share your fear. I mean, if I was personally deciding, is there scope for leaving Murray out?
Yes.
Yeah,
there definitely is.
Yeah,
you just pick all running scrum halves and decide you're going to be
or even you could throw Bolter, Ben Spencer in there as your kicking scrum half, and then go Gareth Davis, Danny Kerr, or something mad like that. They'll just never do that.
They won't. No, they won't.
Gatland likes the guys he trusts as well.
He does, and Murray has that acumen in terms of that. That'll probably stand.
I also think Murray's form is improving.
It has improved
against Leinster was the best he's had in a while.
It's true. It's true.
And his ceiling is very high.
That is also true.
Yeah.
That is also true. But I have that worry. I do have that pet worry, and it's based only on these last few years. But I suppose with that kind of open-ended conversation, drop in the comments who you think should go or has to go, or who are we omitting.
Of course. Try not to take our heads off. It's just our opinion.
Indeed. But we will shift outwards to the Outhalves, which we suspect will also be 3 in number.
I think they have to be, especially when you look at the age profile of some of these guys, like playing on the whatever it is, July 3rd and then July 7th and then July 10th. No, you need to rotate in there.
You do.
And you need to rest some guys.
Stewie can slot in.
Yeah, nah, I don't.
Stewie plays scrum half. We bring 2 scrum halves and Stewie plays scrum half.
It gets very cute when you're doing that stuff. I just like the
They
idea
do
of
a bit of
3
that in
tens.
the Lions, though.
I know, and there's value in those guys, but I just don't really see a clear cut, guy who doesn't play 10 slotting in at 10. And if Stewie's your closest, like, the guy's not a 10.
That's
He
true.
doesn't really play like a Damien McKenzie style fullback either. He's much more effective coming from deep on his long spirals and seeing the whole field.
Yeah, it's true. He's in and out fullback at the moment. He's playing well there. So, from the 10 nominees, I suppose, well, you had the starting ones for the tournament were your Dan Biggers, Johnny Sexton, Finn Russell, George Ford. But then you have Callum Sheedy, Billy Burns, Stewie Hogg, as we were saying, Owen Farrell. Then even behind Joe Simmons and Marcus Smith, potential
bolters. There's a buzz
bolters.
about Marcus Smith this week.
There's a rumour mill afoot that the young kid as a bolter could be getting in there.
He's been great with Danny Kerr. They've been running the ball.
He has been brilliant with Queens, for sure. Then behind you have Jaco van der Vault and Adam Hastings in Scotland. You have Ross Byrne, Joey Carberry as outside punts from Ireland. All of them are unlikely. I think the one that we've said has to go is Finn Russell. Because of the passing acumen, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Gatland just ignoring all of that, because we're not the only ones saying it. Everyone's saying that Finn Russell has to go, and there's good reason for it. You need someone with that passing acumen to try and get around.
Yeah, and you just need a balance. I prefer Sexton, Bigger, and Farrell are the other 3 front runners at the moment, and they're all extremely similar players.
They are. So if you bring all 3 of them and leave Finn at home,
it's a mistake. It doesn't allow you to change the game. And I also think good passing and good attacking, kicking, short kicking, shallow kicks, little flat crossfield kicks or little chips over the centre. That's kind of how you overload that South African defensive system, where Am and co are coming right out and trying to shut down screens. And if it's all screen heavy, you would fear for it, because Am is a really good reader of the game and will just get on top of the outside man and really shut down the outside before it happens.
You saw it. If you just rewatch that World Cup final again, you see the English pullback, smothered, pullback. We're now 40 metres back from where we started 2 phases later and kicking it in the air.
Yeah, and if you look at Severice's break that led to the Kiwi trying to get outside that suffocating defence after 20 minutes of the All Blacks being suffocated, it was a very Finn Russell-esque little flat cross kick to get outside of that. And I just think Finn Russell's offensive toolbook is good enough to overload a very, very impressive Springboks D. And if there is potential that even this great Lions pack gets a bit suffocated by the Springboks, because at their best that's what they do. They get in your faces and they swallow you up and they come out of the line, and then just as you try and get outside those bulky forwards, the Peter Steffs and the like, Am is in the channel waiting for you. And Finn Russell is one of those rare talents that can open up, that can assess that picture in a moment and find an option to open it up. Now there is scope as well for Russell to get bamboozled by that, to try something that's not quite on, and to maybe give the ball away or give the game away. There's always that risk, but I do think that X factor is needed.
So then you're talking one of bigger Ford, Farrell, Sexton, Sheedy with Finn,
Marcus Smith.
Marcus Smith
is ahead of Sheedy now. Sheedy's been injured.
Sheedy has been injured, but he was a brilliant one. I think Dan Bigger should go, but I don't know if they like this.
Bigger's a dead cert for me. I like on all kinds of things. The aerial game, like slotting in at fullback, and just Hogg is great, but if Hogg's feeling a little off in the backfield,
Bigger covers that
Bigger
space.
just covering that so well. His Gary Owen game, you talk about a rush defence and countering that, Bigger has that toolbook. He's in the best form of the 3 fly halves. His passing is incredible. His form for Northampton's brilliant. He's a wonderful reader of the game. Bigger is straight in there for me. Probable starting 10 for me. Bigger all day. And then the third, Sexton has been injured. He was one of the form fly halves in the Six Nations, if not the form fly half, top point scorer, really clutch, really smart, assesses a backline really well, knows how to unpick a defence himself, knows how to play call, reads the game really, really well. And we know as Leinster fans just how much we suffer without him. There's a lot of talk about Ross Byrne, but his capacity to change things when things are going wrong is very, very valuable.
It is true.
And he's delivered for Gatland before. And when he's had the shootouts with Owen Farrell in 2013 and 2017, Sexton's the guy who's got the 10 shirt. Faz also plays centre, and that helps as well. And Sexton's injury profile is worse than Farrell's.
Indeed.
So for me, that's a really tough call between the two of them, and I could see it go either way.
What about George Ford, the greatest 10 to ever play the game?
Yeah, well, I know there's a couple of people out on that train. I don't quite buy it.
No,
I mean, it's like Squidge Rugby's little pet theory is that George Ford's the best out half in the game, and I definitely get what he's saying. I watched his video, and there's merit to the thought of like he's a very good reader of defences. I just kind of reject the idea that he's the only 10 who reads defences. I've seen Sexton and Farrell do very similar things. I've seen Farrell in a Saracen setup run one of the most sophisticated and option heavy offences just to perfection. I don't quite like Ford's got a lovely passing game. He was awesome against Ulster. He just unpicked them so beautifully. I don't think he's too far away, but personally, attributally, like it just goes wrong from one, especially with his kicking game. It just goes wrong from like they go off the side of the boot, and it's all well and good being a good reader of the game, but at times under pressure he kind of melts, and the Springboks will give him no time.
Indeed,
and I kind of just don't think attributally he's got.
We saw it in the World Cup final. It went completely wrong for him, and then we've seen it a few times before. And as you say, attributally, like one of the things that'll stand Sexton instead, the injury profile won't, and the recent concussion won't. That could see him miss out based on that. But one of the things about him and Bigger and Farrell is that when they're in the 10 shirt, they offer that physicality that's almost like a 12, which is what the Saffas will be bringing through Andre Pollard, who just took the field recently and is back from injury. Like that physicality at 10, a guy who will make tackles. George Ford is barely a speed bump off.
Well, he does make his tackles, but he tends to soak a bit, and so does Sexton, to be fair. Like that is an issue. Like Sexton's very, he tries to hold people up, which is just disaster central against the Springboks. You got to get low, and Sexton won't do that, and then sometimes he'll get concussions because of it. I think defence is as big an issue for Sexton as it is for Ford. But I think Sexton's a little better than Ford. I actually think Sexton's reading of the game is as good, if not better, than Ford's. He's a very good reader of the game. It's an underrated attribute of his. Yeah. But for me, it's the Sophie's choice between those two. And yet, there's this talk about Marcus Smith, and if Smith goes, they'll choose him as the bolter over Finn Russell, which for me is crazy. He's a young kid, he needs to play Test rugby first, although it is an interesting one, but Finn is, I think, a level above right now.
Indeed, well, I would argue too that too, but then there's maybe, you never know, maybe Gatland just doesn't like the cut of his jib, and that'll be enough.
It is enough. It is enough. If that's the crack, if coach doesn't like you, you're out.
Indeed.
Gregor Townsend is in there though, and he's been waxing lyrical about Finn. It could, I think Gregor Townsend, it's in his interests to have Finn go, because if Finn doesn't go, there's all of a sudden that rift is going to be right back there in the Scottish camp between all the patch that's been put in there will be peeled right off, and they'll be at each other's throats again with a World Cup to prepare for. So
that's true.
I don't think that Gregor will fancy not having Finn there. I think he'll fight very hard for Finn Russell, which is why I think he'll go.
I think he should go. I think so. Him Bigger and one other.
Farrell or Sexton,
unless you're bringing Farrell as a 12 come 10.
I don't think you can really skirt away and pick all four of them, can you? Maybe. I guess if you're shy on 12s, especially minus George North,
three centres plus Farrell.
Please. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? But I just don't see it bringing all four of them. It would feel like a cop out.
It would. You're going to have to make that Sophie's choice. But maybe not. Stranger things have happened.
It's true.
I think that's kind of the conversation on 10. Who would you bring and who would you start?
I'm not sure. I personally, I think it's really tough. I think you can make a good case for both. I think Farrell is very good as well. I think Farrell at his best is sublime.
Yeah.
Quality
again
passing.
It's a stylistic thing. How would you want to play?
But you know what, Sexton has won the battle between Faz and Sexton. Well, it's harsh to say because Faz moved to 12 in the last Lions tournament. Sexton's been brilliant for Gatland. He's just kind of, the injury might count against him,
and the age profile.
You might just go with Farrell, and it kills me to say because Sexton's brilliant.
And he was better than Farrell in the Six Nations as well.
But if you're being brutally honest about ways to beat the Springboks, Farrell might be your guy as well, especially when you can play 12 and throw those long passes and you're dealing with that defense.
True. All true.
You might go with Farrell. But
Dual
it's tough.
distributor.
It kills me to say.
Okay, with that we will park that controversial one and we will move on to the centres, the midfield. We reckon 4 will go from this. It could be that there are only 3, but they're kind of scrimping on centres to bring other people elsewhere.
Extra back row or something.
Or having guys double jobbing, Farrell being one example. But just in terms of the short list of candidates from Wales, you obviously have Jonathan Davies. You had George North, but he went off in the Rainbow Cup and is now injured. He was a nailed-on test starter for me, but he's now out of the picture. So Jay Davis, Nick Tompkins, Owen Watkin, Johnny Williams and Willis Halaholo. There was a lot of kind of centre by committee. They were kind of trying to work out what their combination was before finding the Davies North one by the end. Then in Irish camp you have Robbie Henshaw, Gary Ringrose and Bundy Aki. Maybe Chris Farrell on the periphery. Those are the 4 who have been Ireland's guys anyway.
Scotland had a rake load as well.
Yeah, indeed. James Lang, Chris Harris, Sam Johnson, Hugh Jones and Cameron Redpath, who is just back from injury and was definitely the most impressive of all of those guys, even though I know
Sean in the Calcutta Cup has looked good for Bath. He wasn't the problem with Bath against Montpellier. He's looked good for them.
Yeah, this is true. And then from England, obviously, we have Owen Farrell again. Depends whether you pick him as a 10 or you pick him here. Henry Slade, Elliot Daly, Ollie Lawrence and Manu Tuilagi. The Manu shout out of nowhere.
He's due back next month, is he? Or this month, actually? According to Alex Sanderson.
You do, like if he's in any way fit, you'd want to bring him because he's that special of a player.
Personally, I mean, this is kind of burying the end of the conversation, but yeah, I'd take a punt on Manu. Just looking at these options as well, I actually think they're quite thin at centre, to be honest. Indeed. In terms of
I think from Ireland you're bringing Robbie Henshaw, and you're
can
not
you make
bringing
a combination
anyone else.
out of those that's a match for Dell, Indy and Am really in terms of quality at their best? I don't think you can.
Redpath Henshaw.
Yeah, Redpath is very green. Redpath is all potential. Henshaw's been great. His form has been excellent. I think he goes. I think him and North was going to be the partnership. And now you're looking at it's not really elite centre time. I tell you, the bookies have the bookies have Henshaw, Davies, Ringrose and Slade.
Yeah, see, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, Ringrose has been awful this year, and no disrespect, I do love Gary Ringrose and he's been great for a long time, but this year he has really struggled. He's really struggled in the open field. Like he's listing to the right and often grubber kicking. Like whenever he has to straighten and give, like with just what you watch the Kiwi Super Rugby teams do so cleanly when it's like a sort of a 3-on-2, but there's open field and the defence can cover. Like the Kiwi guys just know, straighten the ball, be really quick, get a defender to bite in and then give the ball.
Yeah.
Gary Ringrose is awful at that. Like he really struggles with it. He just kind of lifts to the right, eats up the space, and then either throws a switch or drops it on the toe or gets
intercepted.
Yeah, he's been like all over the place. And and then defensively he's obviously got that bad habit of slip and tackle sometimes, and I just don't see him as a lion.
I think Jonathan Davies will likely go.
Jonathan Davies definitely ahead of Ringrose.
Yeah, I think it's him, Henshaw, and
Slade probably.
Yeah. And to be honest, Henshaw Slade has potential as a combination in terms of.
And then Redpath is your bolter, is he, or Harris?
Bolter. I see. This is it. Harris, there's a lot of talk about, and he did have a decent Six Nations, but for me, no one put in as good a performance in the centre for Scotland as Redpath on week 1, and that was total like a really really good showing against England in the Calcutta Cup. Yeah. And to be honest, Harris hasn't shown anything like that. If you're taking
Harris
a punt on Manu,
defensively,
he's been
and he cuts a good line as well.
Like he does, but I would worry, to be honest, against that. Latanya Am, I think, would just gobble him up. I think Latanya
on defense, yeah, that's definitely fair. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think
he would eat him up and spit him back out. So I do. I fear Latanya Am. I really do.
No, I know. I get what you're saying. And Delindi as well. Yeah. You do need physicality in there. Like, yeah, I think Henshaw Slade as a starting combo makes a lot of sense with Davies, depending on form, slotting in for either of them.
Yeah.
And then Harris is your Redpath is your bolter. Definitely makes a lot of sense.
Unless you take the punt on Manu. Which is
that's it. Actually, I did say at the top of this I could take the punt on Manu. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who do you leave behind then if you're taking the punt on Manu?
Probably Redpath. Just on again, it's the same thing as the Kieran Hardy thing. He didn't have the run of games.
Select Manu on paper and tell Redpath if this guy isn't looking right, you're in. We're going to cut him and you're in. If this guy doesn't look right,
that's probably what I would do. Now that being said, it could be something else entirely. It's just that short list. It could be that Harris goes or Sam Johnson goes as well. Like these guys did play pretty well. I know. Yeah. No. Indeed. And. Yeah, who else do we got? Ollie Lawrence, no way. Halaholo had a decent in the brief showings that he had, looked pretty good.
I
in terms of
think he could deliver.
The out there punts that could happen in the catch.
He was an out there punt when he came in for Wales. Like people were like, I can't remember who they were asking for. Jamie Roberts, that was it. He was playing well for Dragons. People were like, oh, get Jamie Roberts in there. You know, because they had an injury crisis at centre, and then Halaholo comes in, and after like 2 minutes, all of that talk was gone because he was everywhere. Yeah, and he is classy.
So there's potential for him to go in as a bolter as well. The question mark is about Manu Tuilagi because he is by far the best of all of those guys, and I know Robbie Henshaw has a brilliant season and is up for player of the tournament, or was nominated for European Player of the Year as well, but like all of that is without Tuilagi there, and when Tuilagi is there, he's just a different kind of specimen in that midfield, and then one that you might need.
Fit Tuilagi is one of the first names on the Lions team sheets, especially just looking at the profile of centres. It's like it's not as good as in other positions, I don't think. If I was picking a World 15, I don't know if I'd have any Lions in there. You certainly like your Gail Ficus and your Hunter Paisamis, even David Avili at the moment are all impressing a little more than the Northern Hemisphere guys in my view. I think it's an issue. It's a problem position potentially. Although Henshaw's form has been great. I don't want to diss him.
He will be defensive leader in there from either 12 or 13, depending on what they want to do. Do they want to have Faz? Do they want to have Slade?
I think having him defend at 12 makes a lot of sense because even though he's leading the line from 12. The Springboks play pretty well. They play a lot through Delindi, and having Henshaw sit him down would just change up things.
And he has experience of doing that with the Leinster Munster showings that we've had of late. So I think he's probably going to be starting either 12 or 13, and then it depends what you want to do with the other jersey. You could go Slade at 13 outside him, you could shift him outside and put Faz at 12. All of these are options there. You could see Halaholo come in and be brilliant. You could see Jay Davies come back and light it up from 12 as well.
Yeah, it's possible.
All of these are potential ones. The only one I'm certain is going is the two are probably Robbie Henshaw and Jay Davies. Outside of that,
you're just thinking there's plenty of Gatland precedent for selecting Davies even against the current.
Indeed. Well, certainly. To be honest, even the last Lions tour, I thought Henshaw ultimately got injured before the second test, which was a shame. But he was lighting it up in the midweek one. I couldn't understand why he wasn't getting a look in. He was actually defending better than he is even now in that 2017 tour. He was just awesome in the open.
Well, he will go. He'll have a fair crack at the test shirt this time around, I'd say. Along with Jay Davis, and then Slade is another one. Slade's quality. He's got that kicking game, passing game.
The left and he's peg is what you kind of all of that. A lovely footballer. So there's definitely options. The Manu Tuilagi is the headache. Do you want to take that punt? Part of you definitely does.
Is there scope for going Redpath over Slade? Taken then
there is.
How much do you trust him?
I don't know. This is it. He hasn't been as exposed as Slade to international footy, which is what we'll probably see. I don't think Redpath is going. I'm just speculating that he might deserve to, because he's been one of the more impressive guys in that centre, and as you say, I haven't been blown away by what we're seeing in the midfield in most of these. No, I
think Chris Harris is probably unlucky to miss out in your mind, just because I think his defensive acumen was probably the best of any, apart from maybe Henshaw. Henshaw's defensive acumen was great, and then Harris also read defences pretty well. But then Scotland did leak a lot of points, so they did. It's probably harsh to you can't really say it's been perfect as well. So I think that makes sense. As a 4/5, depending on the Tuilagi situation. And then we reach at last the summit of this conversation, the outside backs, the last piece of the puzzle. We reckon 6
probably.
There's loads of options. Obviously, this is always a stacked conversation. You're looking at informed finishers. So from Wales, you've got Louis Rees-Zammit, you've got Liam Williams, you've got Josh Adams. That's the starting threesome. Hallamemos also featured in the Six Nations. Lee Halfpenny, he's been player of the series once before, and he's available. Potential bolter at fullback. From Ireland's point of view, I don't think they've been as impressive, but Hugo Keenan has had a good debut season at fullback. Is a quality player himself. Keith Earls, obviously, form has been, it hadn't been great, but then he pulled off one of the great performances he's ever played in an Irish shirt against England, and showed some lethal finishing.
The best performance of his career in Ireland,
perhaps,
probably.
He was stellar.
But James Lowe, Jacob Stockdale outside of him, the left wing options, and Jordan Larmour as well, obviously.
Versatile
dancing feet. From Scotland as well, great back three. Duhan van der Merwe, top try scorer in Six Nations. Darcy Graham, Stuart Hogg, Sean Maitland, all featured.
Graham unfortunately injured at the moment, so he's not going to feature. From an English point of view, obviously you've Johnny May. Elliot Daly lost his jersey and his form, and a good second half against Ireland, not going to be enough to get him involved. Anthony Watson has the versatility, can cover fullback, might be a tempting option, and Max Malins as well from Bristol, who's been in and out, but a good player.
Really good player, yeah. Well, I think there are a few who have to go, don't there? Like Louis Rees-Zammit probably has to go.
Yeah. Informed finisher. I think Johnny May as well, all class.
Johnny May, all class. Then Stewie Hogg.
Yeah, two fullbacks, Stewie Hogg and Liam Williams. That's first and second.
Yeah, I would agree.
Fullback.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
And then the one who's unlucky to miss out is probably Hugo Keenan. But
but he's on the reserve.
He's on the reserve. Yeah. But those two at fullback, and then you're talking Louis Rees-Zammit. Are you talking Van der Merwe as well? Two left wings options, or are you talking Johnny May over Van der Merwe?
Yeah, I'm picking Johnny May over Duhan. I know Duhan was top try scorer. I know he's physical. I just think Johnny May has something extra. I think he wasn't put in space, and even against Italy, like the moment he gets in space, he just does something world class. Yeah. Like he just wasn't put in space by England all tournament. When he's in space, he's unreal, and
that's true.
He's vastly improved his game at covering the kicks.
Yeah.
Which is somewhere where Duhan might be attacked, although Hogg does cover the backfield decently. So the Springboks will be looking to test them both aerially and on the turn. I think May has the experience. I would really, really advocate for Johnny May. I'm a huge fan. I think he could easily start at 11. Yeah, and Rees-Zammit has played on the right wing as well, lest we forget.
That's
right. On both wings.
That's true.
He's
so maybe
picking
him. That's right. Sure, they do that for Gloucester. So perhaps Rees-Zammit on the right. Like Liam Williams definitely going, Stuart Hogg definitely going, I would argue. Then Rees-Zammit definitely, Johnny May, you're saying.
Yeah, Rees-Zammit's on the right.
That leaves two.
Yeah, so hang on, you've got, for me, the starting team at the moment is Hogg at fullback, Rees-Zammit on one wing, maybe Johnny May on the other, and then Liam Williams covering. I think the guy who's pushing Johnny May most on the left is Josh Adams. Maybe not Duhan. Well, Duhan or Josh Adams.
And one of those is missing out and one of those is going.
Yeah, or could you bring both? Anthony Watson is the option on the right wing. He's all class and he covers fullback.
Larimer's the other, I guess, but no, I think Irish backs are going to miss out by and large.
Yeah, I think so. Outside of Henshaw, really, I don't see anyone.
No, the only the lethal one who with a bit of form is Stockdale, but he's behind all these guys.
His form isn't all that either. So no, I think you're looking at Anthony Watson probably on the right. We're just looking at the way they balance it. Louis Rees-Zammit and Anthony Watson on the right wing, Hogg and Williams on fullback, and then on the left wing, May and Duhan / Adams. Which would you prefer? Adams is an all class finisher, just finds tries.
It's true.
And Duhan is super physical, found the most tries this tournament, and is a great runner of the ball as well. And the Safo, though, the
juju will count against him in my head anyway, in my estimations. Well, yeah, I don't know if you can leave the top try scorer of the Six Nations out, but I know that you can because the calibre of the options that you just listed off. Yeah. I don't know. I would probably err on the side of probably bringing Duhan just on.
You're leaving Josh Adams out?
Or
are you leaving Johnny May out? You're allowed to do that, even though I advocated for him.
I don't know if again, Johnny May's just is a special kind of player, although he didn't get to see it all that often this Six Nations. Jeez, it's tough. Someone's going to be missing out.
Josh Adams is a fine player, and he's been top try scorer.
Someone's going to be missing out. Louis Rees-Zammit is nailed on 14 for the Lions for me, and then the 11 shirts.
And the two fullbacks pick themselves.
Yeah, you can start one and rotate the other, either or.
Yeah, and Johnny May's played on the right wing. Like, do you think Anthony Watson could miss out?
Yeah, I do, potentially.
You can move Johnny May to the right wing.
I don't know if he's been that stellar as well. Like if you're bringing one English back in one guy from the English back three that didn't quite shine the way they would have, I think Johnny May is that guy.
Yeah, and yet Watson was really great against I think Wales. He had a couple of lovely touches.
That's true.
He's definitely dynamic. I think he suffers a little in a Bath jersey because they make him do so much and play fullback.
A bit like Ben Spencer. Of Quagmire as well.
Yeah, but he is quality in open field. But yeah, if you were gun to my head, if you were asked me to choose one of May and Watson, I think I'd choose May. I think May is a special kind of player.
Yeah.
But he's a left footer, I know he's played right wing, but he's a left footer, isn't he? So
yeah.
Or is he a right footer? I'm trying to remember. I think I've seen him do chips and chases with his right foot.
Yeah, I've definitely seen him. on either wing be dangerous, or pop up on either side of the pitch and be dangerous. I don't know. Jeez, who am I leaving behind?
Maybe just Watson, but again he can cover fullback. None of the other guys can cover fullback.
Well, Liam Williams goes.
No, but that's the two of them. But then you've got Doohan, Rees-Zammit, May, and Adams. None of them play fullback.
True, but you also have Bigger at 10, who you can maybe slot in.
But he doesn't actually play fullback.
No, true, but.
No, I think actually Watson, now that for versatility reasons, we said at the start of the show that versatility
might matter. Yeah, maybe.
I think I might leave Doohan out, personally. Right. I think that's so harsh. I know that's so harsh.
There's Scots there. Get typing the outrage comment.
Which Scots have I screwed so far? So Xander Fagerson is one. I screwed all the non-Johnny Gray second row options. Jamie Ritchie, screwed him over royal. Ali Price, was a dick to him. Didn't even make
Finn. You fought Finn's corner.
I fought Finn's corner, but then screwed over Chris Harris. You stomped on his grave. Then I mean, we are
merciless. But then I was fighting for wee Redpath, So.
You were killing one Scot to advocate for another. Why not both, Shane? Yeah, why not both? Why can't we have Price, Russell, Harris, and Redpath as our?
No. Not only is that not in the spirit of the Lions, it wouldn't work. So,
you're probably right.
Yeah, so I think one of those is missing out. You say Doohan. I say maybe Watson, but Watson, you see the versatility could save him in that regard. It is tough. I think. It's a toss-up. I think currently Stewie Hogg has the 15 jersey, and the undroppable Louis Rees-Zammit will be there, and then
there's potential as well for them to select Keenan, as well. But I'd
be surprised. Like he was brilliant for Ireland, but Ireland's the dynamism of the backs was the problem for them. Like they won every single forward battle they were in, and the backs weren't able to convert. Whereas the same couldn't be said for Wales. Wales almost lost most of their, certainly in the first half of the tournament, lost all the forward battles and just were more clinical.
Yeah.
And then their pack slowly got into it as the tournament went on.
Yeah. So there's a cruel assessment of Hugo Keenan that you could do, where you could say he's just like a less powerful Rob Kearney.
At the moment, he's younger.
He reads the field, but he lacks that little bit of pace, and he lacks the raw power in the contact and with the boot that Kearney brings.
Yeah. He's also green. He's a little green. He's a young lad.
My point is he's covered wing as well, so that there's but he doesn't really have the pace for wing. So it's maybe not him. Maybe Stockdale, if any Irish.
I think so. Even though he's been or Larmer maybe.
Earls or Larmer, no, not really.
I don't think Earls is within anywhere near.
And yet against England, he was all over it. He was world class that day.
Yeah, no, it's not going to be Earls. It might be Larmer, just for the fact that he does occasionally play fullback. He might be thinking he could slot in a fullback in a midweek team against South Africa Invitational.
If it was 2 years ago, I think Larmer would get in as the young bolter, but it's not, and he hasn't kicked on quite enough. So,
I agree. That's why, and I think it's going to be one of those. Rather than this segue, I think it'll be one of those ones we were listing earlier on who will miss out. It's a high quality problems to be having, and you can definitely make a very dynamic team out of all of those options.
I'm sure we selected a squad somewhere in there with a couple of options. I don't know, if we were getting adventurous, we might try and animate it and put it on the screen for you, because that's kind of our squad. Those are our options that we've gone through. It's real tough selecting 36, and I think every fan who's tried to select 36 has come up with a different option. There's a lot of similar level players. There's some who we all agree on, and there's some who none of us agree on. And
then there might be one or two who we all agree on who Gatland disagrees on, and then that'll
maybe
feed
one
the storyline.
Yeah, maybe one or two. There'll definitely be a storyline.
Yeah.
But listen, if you want to follow us, catch us following all of this live, the drama on Thursday morning. We're going to be up. We're going to be
live on YouTube, 11:30 or so.
11:30.
Ballpark figure.
British and Irish time, and then
we will be 12. Fully expecting Gatland to be there immediately, and then not wholly surprised when he's there an hour into the stream.
Oh, can you imagine? It's going to be cruel now if they just delay the announcement of the squad and we're there live.
Well, you have to listen to Bill Beaumont have a chat first, or a little World Rugby kind of piece.
Get them all out, Jay. All the captains have their say. All the living captains.
A few montages.
A seance for some of the dead captains.
All of that.
No, it could be a long old affair. Hopefully it's just straight out. I think we'll know the captain soon enough, and then, worst case scenario, we can riff on that for an hour.
Indeed.
It's Alan Wynne-Jones. I thought it would be Alan Wynne-Jones. Any questions?
Pretty much. So,
so
that and more live on Thursday. So yeah, do keep an eye out for that. Feel free to drop us a comment. We will answer your chat.
Yeah, and then we'll have a chat afterwards as well. Once the squad's named, about what we think about each decision and who was unlucky to miss out and why we think he might have gone for X or Y option.
Yeah, indeed. Because there's scope for guys who you objectively would think are better, but you might have a combination in mind. Or certainly from we were citing it a little in our going through the guys who've delivered for him 4 years ago. Gatland's definitely going to have good stock in them. That's where you're talking Sextons, Farrells, Murrays, all of these guys, Mackos, all of these guys who have been there before. That will stand them in good stead in terms of just coaches, the devil kind of argument when they're looking at all these options.
I think we'll have an early insight as well into what stylistically is going to be Gatland's thinking
based on
based on the picks he gets. So it'll definitely be revealing, and there'll definitely be intrigue there. And it's important to remember as we react to the decisions that are made, even in disagreement, that there is no guy of anyone that we've listed who's going to be truly unworthy. I mean, this is all the cream of the crop from these four nations.
Yeah.
And even a guy who we were saying, I don't know, like Ali Price or someone like that, who we were like, I don't know, like they have the capacity to be brilliant, and they're like, if they get the Lions cap, it's important to just remember that they're all really, really quality players with the potential to shine on the big stage. Absolutely.
Exactly right. So yeah, I suppose with that we will park this marathon conversation and we will pick it up live on Thursday. If you want to join us for that, please do.
Absolutely. Alright, and we will move on to complete change of pace, but we have a final. It is Super Rugby finals week this weekend. Which is pretty exciting. There's some on the pitch stuff to talk about all the way across in the Southern Hemisphere. And we've got the culmination of Super Rugby's Aotearoa and AU.
That's right.
We're going to start with Super Rugby Aotearoa.
Yes.
In New Zealand. We have the Crusaders against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. This is a good game.
Yeah, some would argue it's kind of like the El Clasico of Super Rugby. Certainly.
Yeah, since I started watching, that's always been the case. Yeah. I've always enjoyed it. There's been some great battles. It always feels like it's the sort of the raw razzle-dazzle offense of the Chiefs up against the sort of the defensive nous, the physicality and the raw professionalism of the Crusaders.
Yeah.
And just stylistically, it always tends to work out and make for a great game, whichever way it goes.
Yeah, true.
I think this is the perfect final. I think the Blues were great at times this season, but they weren't on balance as good a side as they were last season with Bowden Barrett.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs have really kicked on, and they've stuck it to people who thought they were down and out. They are a great team. And they're totally
complete turnaround.
Place.
We always kind of suspected last year that Warren Gatland and the Chiefs was a match made in absolute hell, and so it kind of revealed itself to be. You had Anton Linnert-Brown doing his Hadley Parks impression, looking confused all the while, and D-Mac being frozen out of games and nothing really doing for them the whole time. But no, it's been complete sea change this year, and a kind of a much more of a return to what they're all about in terms of tempo, in terms of accuracy, in terms of just audacity, in terms of what they play. But in terms of who they're facing, you have the Crusaders. Just as far as colour, they are the aristocrats. They are the defending champions. They've been champions since 2017, including winning the inaugural Super Rugby Aotearoa last year.
Four titles on the bounce.
4 titles on the bounce. Scott Robertson, genius that he is. Coaching acumen out the door. You have they come to the final with a 6-2 record, which is relatively unimpressive for them. Those 2 losses will be shocking, but it is still the most impressive record in the competition, and it's such a grueling competition that it's still a very, very impressive one.
Yeah,
there's a reason they come into this final as firm favourites, because the smart money is always on the Crusaders. But there would be some concerns, particularly that 33-12 baffling home defeat to the Highlanders. That was just you rarely see the Crusaders come unstuck like that. And a 1-point defeat to the Chiefs in Hamilton earlier in the season, which is just great for colour in terms of this game.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
I mean the Highlanders very much drive-by shooting, and the Crusaders didn't respond well. They kind of struggled a little bit to get things going. Everything just kind of sort of went the way of the Highlanders, who moved the ball really well. Started Aaron Smith on the bench and then brought him on, which really helped them in that second half. The Crusaders, by and large, there's some minor concerns about that, but still a very fine team and most people's favourites. The Chiefs, they have great pedigree as an offensive razzle-dazzle kind of side. Their offensive play has tended over the years to stand out among Kiwi franchises. Obviously they had back-to-back titles in 2012 and 2013. That's very much the highlight for them as a franchise, that era, but they have had some great sides. I think back to that great side with Aaron Cruden. Who's the head coach of that team again?
It was
Dave Rennie.
Dave Rennie,
current
that's
Wallaby
right.
coach. His side was magnificent, and They never quite made it. They were unstuck by this Crusaders team, I think, back in 2017.
Yeah, indeed.
And that was the sort of swan song of that great Chiefs team, which never made the summit. But to see them in a final again, I just think is magnificent. I think they are always. It's good for the All Blacks when the Chiefs are good as well. You think 2012 and 2013 and what became of that team.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's good for the All Blacks to see that sort of offensive style working really well, and they've been interesting this year. They hasn't been all their own way. You know, they obviously went 0-8 last year, so the turnaround has been great.
Yeah.
And they are the only other side in the competition to boast a winning record, 5-3.
Very impressive considering the calibre of the competition.
Yeah, what's interesting though is that every win that they've had this season, I mean everyone, it's felt like everyone, but literally everyone has been a one-score game.
Yeah,
35-29 was their biggest winning margin. And all 3 defeats they had were blowouts, 15 points plus blowouts, including the last time they played the Crusaders in Christchurch, which was the 39-17 win.
Yeah.
So that's definitely interesting. They have the worst points difference of any side in the competition as a result.
Second best record.
Yeah.
It just goes to show how close these teams are. Like you're thinking the Hurricanes didn't make it, the Highlanders didn't make
five
it.
of them
they are brilliant teams. Like, there's potential for this cross Tasman thing to go badly for the Aussies just because there's a lot of high quality stuff in
some
in
of the Aussies. I think the bottom 3 Aussies, but I think the
Indeed,
Brumbies and the Reds
I will mix it. I think so too. Yeah, but it is interesting in terms of just that quirk of the fact like you can have a winning record and still be negative points difference. That's kind of what Super Rugby Aotearoa is about. And then you had guys like Aaron Smith talking about just the attrition level of it, that it's a tougher competition than Super Rugby, and that he doesn't know if it's going to last into the post-COVID times. I don't know, like from the outside looking in, I think it's fantastic, it's great to watch. I think there's probably some merit to what he's saying, like back-to-back derby games.
Yeah, you might argue last week that a lot of the Kiwi guys played their best rugby in Super Rugby Aotearoa and not for the All Blacks, which is not what they want.
Indeed,
there's definitely a case to be made there. But as it is, just from a neutral point of view, it's great to watch. And I think despite the Chiefs having that negative points difference, what will stand to them is that like they've been in 5 close games and they've won all of them. Yeah. They've won every close game they've been involved in, including a game against the Crusaders. Yeah. Often with sort of a late clutch kick from DMAC, who's been outstanding.
What'll also give them good optimism is just even some of their showing against the Hurricanes. I'm thinking of earlier in the season where they were like going to the scrum and scrumming them over. They scored that lovely try where they just kept going to a dominant scrum against a team which was just like. Not only was that not the case last year, they were getting pulverised by every team in that set piece, and you know that the Crusaders are going to be very, very tough in that area, but this season they have some confidence to mine from. They're not completely gone in the tight 5, not far from it. They should be trying to stand up and play their best game of the season against these Crusaders, and then backing themselves to be slightly more clinical when they get it out wide.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sort of the main colour of the match. Obviously it is that the Crusaders are the bookies' favourites at home, but the Chiefs, they're still a very fine side, and on their day they can beat anybody. We're going to take a look now at the 2 sort of squads. Obviously we're not in a position to have the squads. It's Tuesday as we shoot this. You may have them by the time you're watching this, but we're just going to basically look at sort of the key men for each side, starting with the home side and the favourites, the Crusaders. They've had 2 real standouts this season, but their player of the season for me has to be Cody Taylor. I mean, that guy's been everywhere. He's been playing centre for them as well as hooker. He's been outstanding.
He's awesome in loose. The turn of heel that he shows in the open field is phenomenal, and then the scrummaging acumen as well. The darts have been
carries in the tight, bit of footwork and speed and power.
For a guy that dynamic in the loose to not be shirking his set piece duties at all, far from it, being like excellent in that area, and then having that on top, like you're talking World 15 level.
Special player in special form, which is just a very dangerous combination. He's been outstanding. And certainly if they can get him on the ball often and always running at Chiefs defenders and getting on top of his opposite number, that's going to be a dangerous situation for the Chiefs, and they'll definitely stretch the defence if they get him on top of the carry game. The other guy who's been very special is Richie Mo'unga, whose form is immaculate. I mean, he
goes from strength to strength. He's been pretty much on an upward curve for the last few seasons in terms of just progression, steady incremental improvement in terms of game management, in terms of roundedness, as well as being an attributable threat himself. Like he's a running threat, he's a catching threat, he's a kicking threat, but it's just his little bit of nous.
He's deciding which to do and executing which at the right times.
And it's like he is kind of emblematic of the difference that has been this Crusaders team versus the rest in terms of just that little top 2 inches of nous that sees them home when the blank hips the fan, they kind of show a little bit more calm and a little bit more assuredness, and he's a big part of the reason
and
why.
So is the structure. I mean, you get a lot of guys who pick lovely lines off him and make his decisions for him, and that helps. And what also helps is just that forward unit.
They tend to dominate a lot of these teams in the forward pack.
Well, they've got All Black. They've got serious Test rugby and All Black acumen in that pack. They've got obviously Alatoa, the Samoan international, is a very fine player, but Scott Barrett and Sam Whitelock have been huge for them this season. And then even Sione Havili is a very fine player in the back row. Cullen Grace, very fine player as well. Ethan Blackadder, Waythue Douglas earlier in the year was fantastic as well.
That back row by committee that they have going on, where they can just rotate these guys in and be dominant, and then
similar level guys, but work really well within the structure and just work their socks off, and that's very much the solution of the non-All Black guys. And then those few key differentials in Taylor, Whitelock and Barrett as just the next level players that have helped them dominate just about every pack they've come up against.
It's true. And then in the back line as well, you have some guys like David Havili having an absolute renaissance at 12 this season. Like, you never would have thought that the centre would be the place for him to switch to, but he's been awesome there, and his passing game crisp.
He's going to do now what he's not been able to do, which is break right into the All Blacks team. He's not been able to do that since he broke out at fullback. There's been too much talent, but this switch to centre is perfect. It's everything he's needed and everything the All Blacks have needed and everything the Crusaders have needed as well. He's been fantastic as a second distributor. He's got a wonderful running game and kicking game, as we know, but his passing has come on leaps and bounds, and just having him in that distribution role has been magnificent. It's really helped them. They're just maintain that clinical edge, especially without Jack Goodhue. Yeah,
indeed. And Fine Anuku's is also shifted in there as well. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he was lighting it up earlier in the season from the wing, and then they moved him to 13. Like, I definitely think he's going to be a key man on both sides of the ball. Obviously, razzle dazzle when put in space. Very interesting job defensively as well, with D-Mac coming in on those sweeping runs from the outside.
It's a big job.
He's got the pace to cut that down, so it'll be interesting to see how they manage that D-Mac threat, and he might be a big part of that.
And then just how wide the smorgasbord of talent, like George Bridge came back in and was awesome. Will Jordan can't stop scoring. Sevu Reece back to his awesome best this season as well, like just high quality. In the back line, and then in the rotation of scrum halves, even we missed out. You have Mitch Drummond, or was it Mitch Drummond? Yeah, Mitch Drummond and Bryn Hall, just rotating in and out, and you can swap if one's not quite going well.
Yeah, for me, Drummond has been the standout this season.
He has, but Bryn Hall isn't that much of a step down. Like, Kiwis just know scrum halves, don't they? They just produce proper scrum halves who play with tempo and get things going, and the Crusaders are no different. There's a really good brains trust there to allow Mo'unga to get some good platform and good go forward and use those weapons out wide.
Yeah, 100%. So just real quality talent. I mean, that back three as well, that's like an All Black back three. It's that good, and they're that lethal, and if they can find space, they'll be key. For the Chiefs, on the flip side, as far as key men are concerned, your number one, it's hard to look past the man who's very much become the face of the franchise in Damien McKenzie.
Yeah, well, he's got a great face for the franchise. He smiles at the posts before he kicks his threes, and he kicks his threes.
Oh, he's box office. I mean, but like on the pitch as well, his form has been essential. He's the leader of the team. He runs that offense. He slots into first receiver so often. He's the best passer. He's the best runner. He's the clutch goal kicker, and he's the last line of defence, and has come up with some clutch defensive plays as well. I mean, he is, like, talk about heart and soul. Yeah. Certainly of the back line, but really of the team. Yeah. He has just been everything with the absence of Sam Kane, and to come up with just winning kick after winning kick. I mean, he's got bottle for days as well as talent, and I think he's blossoming into the player we knew he could become. And I think even in the most stacked conversations around the All Black fullback with Geordie Barrett and Will Jordan, obviously, I think he's now front runner to take that jersey, and that's just a testament to how good he is. Even with Bowden Barrett as a potential bolter with Richie Mo'unga, he's a special player in special form,
and getting him on the ball early and often will be vital for them as well. Other key men, you have Brad Weber at the tempo driven, another 9 who drives a really good tempo and gets them moving very much so. If they're going to unpick this very organised Crusaders defence, it'll have to be done at high tempo with accurate passing, and stretching the field, getting D-Mac on it in the wide channels. You're not shifting him into 10 because he's going to get smothered there. You want him kind of sweeping through the outside and linking with your Nana Saturos, your Jonah Lowe's, Anton Linnert-Brown as well in the midfield. These are good guys, good attributable guys, but you know that your key men are out wide, and your best chance is high tempo, frenetic but accurate against this organised Crusaders juggernaut.
Yeah, and the Chiefs are no strangers to that. Keep the offloads going, the Ruckaverse,
support
all
lines
that stuff.
everywhere.
And Nana Satoro has been in fine fettle as well. In the pack, I think they deserve a lot of credit. They've really stepped up. I think that engine room in particular of Tupou Vai and Natoa Akoi, they've come up with clutch plays, clutch steals from Akoi.
Has improved as well. Just the set piece in general, like you have to credit the tight five with the massive turnaround from last season to this season in terms of they were porous in that area. They were literally just getting blitzed by every team in the tight five in the set piece last year, and it's just been a complete turnaround. They've actually got on top in a few instances in the regular season.
On the Hurricanes in both games they got on top. That's absolutely huge. And even the back row, Boshier has been great. From Boshier, Mitch Brown I think has been fantastic, and Luke Jacobson as well. They're very, very similar attributably to the Crusaders lads, and definitely more than capable of holding their own, as they've shown in just about every game this season. They can be a bit porous at times defensively, but they have big steals in them. They have good carry game. They move the ball very well, and to a man, even in that forward pack, they can handle a ball and offload.
And keep the pace going. A lovely footballer at 8 can really link with the back line well, as well as tuck and carry. Tuck and carry as well. They definitely have the personnel to do it. The question, like the bench, will probably they have some good impact there. You have your likes of Tuhuri Orangi and Tia Tia, but generally I would look to the Crusaders bench as more of a strength than their own. So the onus will be on a lot of these guys to step up and to deliver, and they are the underdogs. It will require things going their way, much the way it did in that 1-point win in the regular season. It'll take a few bounces of the ball here and there and a few rubs of the green, but then once you get that, capitalising on them. What you don't want to see as a Chiefs fan is like them starting with all razzle dazzle, starting at 100 miles an hour, and then turfing the second last pass before the tries there. That's
such a familiar Crusaders picture, isn't it? When they soak up the pressure and then counter strike as well. You could easily see something like that happening.
Indeed.
Bryn Gatland is the other guy from the Chiefs who we haven't mentioned.
Yes, and he's been at 10, and he took a few nice tries in the regular season. He's definitely moves them about. It kind of probably helps him. He's a little limited, but it helps that D-Mac's the guy who's got the place kicking thing on his shoulders.
Yeah, and even the kicking from hand. I mean, sometimes his kicking can be a bit ropey.
But you have a guy like Brad Weber on who's all experience, even though he's very unlucky to be on the periphery of the All Blacks shirt just because of the quality of TJ and Aaron Smith, but he is a test level and very experienced halfback. And then you have your talismanic 15 outside him, so within that, the 10 kind of becomes a little bit more of a conduit for play, not dissimilar to how French 10s operate, just kind of shifting the ball thing, being a running threat yourself, sometimes taking the line on when it's there, but generally being there to facilitate the other guys around you and get the ball moving.
Absolutely, I bet all quality there. I would fear just a little bit that the game, when the Chiefs have been at their worst this year, the game's become a little too much about Bryn Gatland or Trask, whoever's in there, but it'll be Gatland, I think. But sometimes he's had bad starts to games where he's just kicked loosely, and I don't think that they should be leaning on him
against the Crusaders. Kicking loosely.
No. It needs to be about Mackenzie. I know what you're saying about shifting him wide, but he's shifted into first receiver effectively a lot of the time. He's the guy who has the good vision in terms of running that offense and deciding when to go and when not.
True.
And you're right in saying Gatland needs to be sort of standoffish a little bit.
He kind of needs to be the link man between Weber and Mackenzie.
But Mackenzie comes in at times and does that himself, and you got to let Mackenzie make the calls, and you can't make it the Bryn Gatland show. I don't think they want that.
Well, they don't win that game. I don't think
so.
Bryn Gatland versus the Crusaders doesn't go well.
No, I don't think so. As good, I don't think he's a bad player, but I just think Mackenzie's definitely your elite guy who needs to be present. And if Gatland is failing in the role of linking between Weber and Mackenzie, you've got a problem there. So he just needs to be solid without being spectacular.
I think so. So with all that said about the squads, then we'll just look at the three kind of keys to victory for both sides, just in terms of bullet points. What are the keys to victory? So we'll start with the hosts and favourites, and that's the Crusaders, and defending champs, I should say, perpetual champs,
undisputed.
And it's not undisputed. It's it's one of my least favourite things. It is disputed. We have a final.
We're having
right
a dispute.
Now. It's a dispute. But for the Crusaders, the keys to victory, obviously, shut down Mackenzie. Hit Mackenzie, shut him down, and if you do that, you will shut down the Chiefs' offense if you can contain that guy. Easier said than done.
No, that's huge. But the way he roams around the field, with the way the Chiefs play the game, He's the guy who's going to make the killer pass. He's the guy who's going to stretch the field. Everything that the Chiefs have that's going to open up that Crusaders D goes through Mackenzie, and you see like he's very dangerous when off turnover ball. Obviously, it's very difficult to deal with when he comes sweeping from deep into the line. But when he's in the back line, when he's running in behind those screens, I think you got to put a shooter out into the passing channel, and you got to force him to make brave decisions, or try and truck it up and carry.
Force
and
him
then
into
get
contact is perfect.
But guys like your Scott Barrett's, or even someone like Cullen Grace or one of those back rowers, someone needs to be put on him and tracking him as he's trying to run.
I wouldn't love
field.
Scott Barrett as a matchup. He's a bit big and cumbersome on the
turn. Maybe a bit slow, but even like a Havili, but like you really want someone kind of tracking him. I think of like there's been games when we've played like elite attackers. I think of like Nemani Ndolo, and he's very different. He's a big unit, and I remember seeing like Leinster play a game against him where Robbie Henshaw was very much just tracking him because he knows how important he was to what Montpellier were trying to do. And if you get him and you stop him, like think Springboks against Jonah Lomu way back in 1995.
Swarm tackles.
That kind of thing where you have at least one or two guys just tracking him across the field. What the Chiefs are trying to do is get outside you. They're trying to get Mackenzie on the ball. It's tough when they're coming from depth, but just one or two key shooters. I think Faye Anuku getting into passing lanes, cutting him off, forcing him inside, and then having guys ready to hit him and stop him and slow him down,
hold him up, rip the ball out from him.
Those kind of things. If they can really get a hold of Mackenzie, force him inside and force him to take some contacts, I think that could be huge as far as defensive.
And it would, exactly. And it would dent the confidence of the Chiefs as well. Pick another key moment number 2, pick moments on defence and punish the Chiefs on transition. This is not unique to them matching up against the Chiefs. It's very much Crusaders' MO is just soak all their pressure, soak everything you want to do, and then clinical on the transition strike when you have the ball. You don't want it. They're not a team that want to go through 1,000,001 phases and wear you down that way. They would rather soak up your pressure with accurate defence and then really pounce and spread it wide and get Will Jordan on the board. That's what it's been all about.
Indeed, absolutely. Like when the Chiefs have the ball, this is a second point on defence, because I definitely think it's the most fascinating matchup when the Chiefs have the ball and what the Crusaders can do to stop them. But I think it just broadly speaking, if they can respect the talent of the Chiefs, not overcommit to breakdowns, keep the width of the field strong, give them nothing on the inside, because you trust your power guys, you trust your Whitelocks and your guys like Cody Taylor to make tackles on the inside, force them to stretch the field and maintain your discipline, obviously with that focus on Mackenzie that we talked about, but just wait for kind of the right moment. Maybe there's one opportunity where a guy gets isolated on a half break, wait for the right moment, or if the Chiefs, likely if they're being stopped, if the defence is maintaining its width, they're going to force a pass and make an error, and that's when the Crusaders become the Crusaders. And if they can get that pop and that zip going where they get the ball and instantly they all know what they're doing, the ball gets into Malonga's hands from a bit of depth, he knows where to put it, the guys are all picking the right lines, and that's where you can open up that defence on transition and get that sort of 14-point try when the Chiefs are trying to attack.
And those are
the stingers.
The moments that absolutely, they're like a liver shot in boxing. They're just going to take the wind right out of the Chiefs. If they can do that even once or twice, it should be enough to see them home in this final. And it is a big part of their game plan for the last, to be honest, under Scott Robertson, it's been a huge part of their model, is just that transition and being accurate when you do get the ball. That's no different in this match. And then just the third point is, it's a very simple one, but be more physical. Be the more physical team. Be the bigger, stronger, meaner pack and bully them.
They have All Black firepower up front that the Chiefs don't. And the Chiefs have a very fine pack and they can go toe to toe. And they've
undoubtedly improved. They've undoubtedly improved massively on last year. But if you can shock them in the contact area, drive them back.
Speed, offloads, but just power on both sides of the ball. If you give them, from a defensive point of view, if you give them nothing on the inside, it really does frustrate them. You make everything slow, and then on the other side of the ball, it can be just such a bailout for your backs if you can reliably hit guys like Scott Barrett and guys like Cody Taylor and just get yards and perhaps even little offloads, and then just get on top of teams.
Interplay with the forwards, if they can get a hand free as well as sitting a guy down, that will lead to a steamroller. You
just look the better team. It is a game of contacts at the end of the day, rugby, and to a large extent. And while speed and razzle dazzle can sometimes counteract that. If you are the more physical side, if you do own that contact area,
and certainly if you do assert yourself at that set piece, things like scrum, if they can get on top in that area, it's very, very difficult, and you have to play near flawless rugby if you're the tackle averse guys who are losing every contact but want to be flicking passes everywhere. You have to be so accurate for that to work, because every now and then you're going to need to tuck the head and go forward, and the Crusaders are going to be trying to be game to stop them, smother them on that, give them nothing on either side of the ball, as you say, and kind of bludgeon them down. It's a rudimentary thing. It can be an ugly thing, but it's very, very effective, and the Crusaders are bloody good at it. Yeah,
own the contact area. Don't give them anything on defence, swallow it all up, punish on transition. If they can execute in those areas, we'll get to see the likes of, the stars, the likes of Orongo and Havili and Severis and Will Jordan. Yeah. They'll get their tries.
Will Jordan starts with his third try in as many minutes.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Those are the kind of spiralling moments that the Crusaders have produced. And listen, every time there's been a big game, I mean, the Chiefs' loss was a drive-by shooting, so to an extent was the Highlanders' loss at home. But you think of that Blues game where the Blues were really coming for them at Eden Park, and the Blues are a fine team. The way that they sort of counterpunched everything that the Blues had, the difference in clinicality there, like they are a very fine team.
That still could be there as far as a difference. Like the Chiefs have been really worthy. They've had a great season. They are worthy finalists. I do fear for them in that matchup. I think if the Crusaders can even get 2 out of those 3 keys for victory, I think they kind of walk away with it.
Potentially true. Listen, there is a narrative though that the Chiefs do win the game, and we are going to look also at their sort of 3 keys to victory that we've sort of isolated. I would say that the first is to sort of match the clinicality of the Crusaders, and there's a way that they can do that. Sticking the passes. The Crusaders are very, very disciplined. They know what they're doing. They're picking the right runs. The Chiefs at their best are a lot more improvisational.
Yeah,
they're
almost
not
like
as structured.
Jazz rugby a lot of the time.
Yeah, totally. But they're like, I love the way, like, when they get stuck on the outside, like Jacobson or someone, or even Akoi will just like fling a ball up and someone will get it, and they'll keep the pace of the game going. But their instincts are sharp, and in Damien McKenzie they have a really elite operator.
Open field run.
Indeed, and not to mention Nanai Satoro, absolutely lethal, and Anton Linder.
They have
all
all
these guys. But keep the offloads going, move the ball really well, stretch the whole width of the field, and just take tries. They all have that instinct in them. Be themselves, pick good lines, and even a good Crusaders D when stretched and against sharp passing and accurate sort of support lines.
Will infringe.
Will wilt. And then
absolutely. And then trust DMAC to kick your 3s over as well. I think you want to grab tries in the open field, but when the Crusaders are making mistakes like that, chip the 3 over, keep the scoreboard ticking.
That's my second point as well, just to almost highlight that is generating and punishing the ill discipline from the Crusaders would be my tip too, and it does sort of come into that clinicality as well.
Keep that pace high and have the passes stick, and then 5 or 6 phases in, if they're getting purchase, the Crusader Whitelock will probably put his hands in there and slow it all down. He has form in that.
It's one of their worst attributes. It's one of their worst attributes. Their discipline can go a begging when the going gets tough.
When the tempo gets high and the phases get many.
They'll just give up a penalty, and the Chiefs are certainly primed to punish them for that. And even if they are like being sort of clinical and have punished the Chiefs on transition, there is a way to mitigate that by just chipping over 3s. And I'd certainly advise, just given the maul defense of the Crusaders, you got to take your 3s. Just punish the ill discipline and back yourself to exit and go again.
Their 5 metre maul. As much as you do want to back yourself from 5 metres, it could be a little naive to be doing that from the off.
The maul defense is too strong.
It's too strong, and to be honest, even a fake maul and a pullback and let your backs try and do it would be a better option from there. But I think trusting DMAC's boot, try and be the team that starts faster and do that by
and the more disciplined team, and then also the more as clinical. Just take your chances when they're there. Don't the passes have to stick.
They do.
You've got to get them right. You got to get the right weight on them. You got to pick the right support lines. Keep it going. Play your rugby. They are adventurous, and that's the nature of it. But the way the Chiefs win is the passes stick.
It has to be. It has to be about that. So it needs to be with ambition and audacity. They're a more ambitious and audacious team than the Crusaders. Crusaders are more rudimentary, but you can be as clinical even with that different game plan, and it will just, things will have to go their way. I think it's slightly stacked against them, but that is still their model. And then just in terms of key number 3, you have controlling the territory game, which I think is an understated one of massive significance, because when it's gone wrong for the Chiefs, they've suffered those massive defeats. they've got that all kinds of wrong. And they've ended up in their own half for large periods, and that's why the game's got away from them. And the Crusaders are definitely capable of making them do that. If they're playing too much rugby in their own half and getting isolated, and the Crusaders will gobble that up. And it's one of the examples of being naive. If you're thinking, oh, we have to fling the ball around, so here we are just outside our own 22, do I see a bit of space? It doesn't matter, go wide, and then with a slightly inaccurate pass, we didn't actually kick. The Crusaders now have
and it compounds, and you even see the relentlessness of the Crusaders. We've seen teams compound errors in that way, just give them entrances, and they are just one of the toughest teams in club rugby to stop when they have entrance to your red zone. They're ruthless. And it will, it's not the Chiefs' game defending their line. It's not anybody's game against the Crusaders. They got to get it out of there. They got to pick their moments. They got to kick well. They got to be the more disciplined side and not give up entrances from set piece. Yeah. If they can hold all that together and trust the boots of Weber and Gatland and McKenzie to probe the right areas at the right times,
get them out
of
their
the
territory.
long spirals going on exit, and then get up there, give up nothing, force the Crusaders to kick it back, hopefully.
Which they will. If you present nothing to them, they will. They will engage in a kicking battle.
And then obviously try and break in your moments on kick return, pick the right corners, edge the kicking battle. Against a clinical side like the Crusaders, the key is to not give them opportunities, and winning the territory is massive.
Exactly, and controlling the territory. If they can get it near 50-50, they're in with a great chance. But if they're starting to shift, it's one of those things that you'll see, maybe they'll start okay, but when they go behind or a few things, it's the kind of thing that you can see starting to unravel when you speculatively try a wide pass and you're going to try and run it out from here. You get D-Mac on the ball, 2 passes into the phase. Oh no, he's swallowed up. Oh wait, okay, we'll just seal on that ruck. Oh no, that's a penalty. Oh damn, now the Crusaders are down in our territory. Those are the kinds of panicky decisions that can come from a Chiefs team that are just trying to be ambitious and trying to go, but not really realising that it's not on, or that it's unwise, or that the passes in question need to be so on the money that the Crusaders are just gobbling them up. And what you can't allow is just that pressure and that heat to go to the players' heads. And in the middle third of that pitch, which is very important in terms of the territory game, it can swing on a swivel in there. If you're accurate in that middle third, you can force errors from your opponent.
Yeah, and you still want to stretch the field. You still want to do all of those things. You want to do all of that, but you want to do it on your own terms.
Exactly,
and you want to kick in your own terms.
If you're reacting in the middle third and trying things that aren't necessarily there, panicking, turning one error into 3 into 4, that's the recipe for it. The Crusaders are so good at what's the old adage, when your when your enemy's making mistakes, don't interrupt them. And the Crusaders will live by that. If the Chiefs are floundering around in front of them, they will kind of just hold their width and then wait for their chance, pounce, take it, and go up with no apologies.
And they do have to be brave, but they have to mix that kicking game in with the passing game as well, and just get find those right moments, force the Crusaders to exit, play patient, and obviously just milk ill discipline. And that's very much a narrative. They're obviously also going to have to front up to the Crusaders challenge. You're going to have to defend the accurate play of Moanga. You've seen at times when they're stretched, they can leave gaps, and the Crusaders will exploit that. They'll have to be wise to that.
Big job for guys like Leonard Brown in the centre to try and shut all that down in terms of Moanga's passing, and then just the whole pack, man for man, will know that it's going to need to be the biggest game of their whole season, and they've been good this season, but they're all going to need to step it up.
But I do think if they can get those 3 points, if they can match the Crusaders' clinicality, if they can punish their ill discipline and control the territory, I think they have a great chance of doing what they haven't done since 2013 and collecting some silverware and winning a trophy. And I think it would be past time for such a great franchise.
For the Waikato faithful. Yeah, indeed. With all that being said, how do you see this going? Are you nailing your colours to the mast, Chiefs, man?
Yeah, well, obviously I'm dressed for the occasion. I mean, honestly, you ask me honestly, I think the Crusaders will win. I think they have more in the tank. I think the 2 losses are just, just misdirection. I think they're a very fine team. I was so impressed when they met the Blues early in the season when the Blues were kind of gunning for them. And I think it broke the Blues, honestly.
It did.
A little bit. It shocked and broke them. And just the fact that they've been able to get ready for this match now. For a couple of weeks. They had the bye last week. I just think they'll be primed and ready. They'll know the challenge that the Chiefs are going to bring. They'll have the memory of that defeat, but also the memory of their big win as well. and I think they'll know how to punish the Chiefs. I think they'll be relentless, and I think they will punish them. I just think they're that bit better, that bit more organised. But I don't think this Chiefs side are far away. I think they've done brilliantly to get this far. And I definitely think they have the potential to upset. I think D-Mac might be the best player in the whole comp, although Cody Taylor pushes him very close.
Yeah, indeed. So great master. I'm going to say that the Crusaders are probably going to win as well, but I'll say the Chiefs do it. I'll say the unlikely Chiefs.
Here I am in a Chiefs jersey, but I just can't. I can't. Like I'm honest about what I think. That's my thing. I'm honest about what I think.
No, I think honestly, I think you're probably right. But I'm going to say that the Chiefs do it. I'm going to say on this occasion the passes do stick.
I'd love to see it.
The Crusaders do come unstuck a little, and maybe they flounder and make some uncharacteristic mistakes.
And D-Mac with the late kick again, the smile at the post.
Could you imagine? Or like maybe Mwonga overthrows a pass and D-Mac grabs it and runs it in. All of this stuff. I'm dreaming. I'm sure there are some guys in Waikato dreaming something similar right now.
It could happen, it could happen.
I think in terms of matchups, like the Crusaders and the Blues from last season in the inaugural Super Rugby Aotearoa, we were building that up as a big contest. I think it's a worse matchup because I think the Crusaders are just that little bit better at the same kind of game across the area, the power game. Whereas with the Chiefs, there's that variable where they're a little more. The razzle dazzle rugby can unstick. Sure,
in moments they're phenomenal,
and you saw like the Highlanders painted the picture of how to do it, in terms of just coming with that accuracy and acumen and speed and catching them a little bit napping, and then they can be a little sluggish. The big juggernauts that they are. So. Hopefully,
paint them a picture they're not used to being.
If the Chiefs can go 14-0 up in the first 20, and then we're game on, baby.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. Let us know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think either way, it's going to be just a great final.
Yeah,
this is mouth-watering. This is one of the best club competitions,
high quality rugby
ever.
All throughout. Actually, throughout the whole tournament, has been fantastic quality. The Kiwi teams know how to play,
and there's nothing between them. But to see these two, I think that we have got a deserving final of the two best teams, and I'm just really, really looking forward to it. This takes place on Saturday, 8:05, I think, or something like that. Our time. I don't actually have the time. It is Saturday at 8:05. Woo!
There you go.
I was just guessing, but that's where they're going. And I'll be up, and I'll be really looking forward to it. It's a truly exciting one. So
absolutely. With that, we will move on across the Tasman, and we will check out Super Rugby AU. Yes, because there is another final this weekend, and it is the only two it could have been. It's the Reds v the Brumbies. An awesome matchup between two awesome teams that have really been the two finds of Super Rugby AU in terms of they've obviously always been there, but in terms of just the cream rising to the top and in the whole dynamic of this domestic comp, you've seen that these two are a cut above the rest.
These two have been, but by not getting so routinely beaten by the Kiwi sides, these two have allowed the sort of young squads that they have to develop and get better, and have arrived at two teams that we'll find out in the weeks to come in Super Rugby Trans-Tasman, but in my view are thoroughly capable of competing with those Kiwi teams.
Yeah, I think so.
I think they're two phenomenal teams. It's been always the final. They're heads and shoulders above the other three teams in the competition.
They are.
It's as they were last year. It's a repeat of that Super Rugby AU final from last year.
Yeah.
The two best teams in the competition from the outside have looked levels above the other three for all season.
It's true.
They're actually statistically, I was reading through their stats,
identical,
freakishly similar in terms of
they've played twice in the regular season, both of which were the narrowest 2-point wins for the Reds on both occasions, which is why the Reds are at home, and it's why the Reds are probably slight favourites currently in terms of the betting favourites. But as you say, with the stats, I don't know, you want to list them off. The Reds averaging 4.13 tries per game, Brumbies 4.33.
Nothing
worlds apart.
But then the Reds have slightly higher average points scored per game, with the 34 to the Brumbies 32,
which is about right. Another 2-point difference in that, which was the same when they met. And again, you're saying the two meetings this season, 40-38 to the Reds and 24-22 to the Reds, 2-point games in each.
I mean, total points scored the Brumbies edge, but they did play a game extra, 288 to 271. Average carries per game 104 to 104. I mean, it's just insane. Average offloads 6 to 7. Reds with 7 edge that. Average passes, the Brumbies have slightly more, 139 to 136. Insanely similar.
Negligible difference in all of these stats.
The key difference for me is that the Reds have the better scrum, 100% scrum success, insane stat, to the Brumbies 89.
Taniela
Tupou gets involved there, and then the Brumbies have the better line out, no surprise there, 92 to 87.
And the drive they're in as well. Maul try.
Yes, and then the other thing is that the Brumbies are worse discipline-wise, and that has been a key differential in both of the games that they played against the Reds so far.
Definitely a factor, yeah.
As far as the Reds are concerned, just broadly speaking, you know, their franchise, they aren't a franchise with much history of success. They've had some. They won back-to-back titles in the amateur Super 10 competition in 95 and 96. Then at the beginning of the professional era of Super Rugby, they lost a couple of finals early doors.
Yeah.
But then they kind of they ebbed and flowed and went down and never really contested the finals.
Obscurity a lot of the time.
All the way up to 2011, when that razzle-dazzle team of Genia and Quade Cooper and a few others, that was the spine of that Aussie team that went to the semi-final and actually won Bledisloe that year. I think that might have been the last time they won Bledisloe.
Yeah.
Back in 2011, or did they win Bledisloe? Maybe they didn't. Maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe they won against the All Blacks and won Super Rugby, but not Bledisloe. I don't think they've ever fucking won Bledisloe.
I don't even know. Yeah,
but that great Aussie team was spearheaded by that Reds team, which actually went and won Super Rugby.
That's right.
But Brad Thorne did not take them in healthy position. They were pretty much down
they were
and out.
hemorrhaging points every time they took the field, and were a bit more raggedy. And Quade Cooper, there were a bit more miles on the clock for all those players. But just in terms of the ethos, there were fewer fans of the crowd. There was looser passes on the pitch. It was a bit of a
mess.
It was a complete mess. It looked like beach rugby,
and it looked like the people of Brisbane were just turning their backs on it as well. It was depressing.
Yeah,
really.
It was a franchise that was circling the drain at that time, and that was tough to see. And Brad Thorne took some flack when he came in, and he axed Quade Cooper. He was pretty merciless in terms of his cull that he put through. It was almost like a venture capitalist coming into a new company and just culling everyone. It was like completely going to change the ethos here by getting rid of the old guard entirely and rebuilding. And there was a little bit of a betting in period where it didn't work. We were sceptic because they were playing uglier footy and still losing in the first season. They were slower, they were a bit more rudimentary, and they were still not successful. So it was very easy to be like, what the hell are you doing? But then, slowly but surely, with a few shrewd acquisitions, he's built a really, really good side. Yeah. And now it's night and day. It's a completely different side from that 2011 side. It's obviously 10 years hence, but...
culturally new as well. It's not all razzle-dazzle, it's part razzle-dazzle, but there's a lot of physicality. Brad Thorne was sure to put in sort of what he sees as the baseline rugby-wise of sort of power and discipline. Yeah. And work rate. In other words, their theme of the season is earn it. Yeah, that's their kind of theme that they've kept going back to with Brad Thorne. And
if they win this game, they will have done so.
Yeah. But they're not there yet, and he's invoked real discipline and a couple of, as you say, shrewd acquisitions. You look at James O'Connor and how his renaissance has come along with the Reds in many ways as well. Yeah. But Brad Thorne can't get enough credit, and now he's taken them from a place where they were down and out to a little bit better, to ugly but still kind of improving, and then to last year really look a promising side, really great players,
just should win at the top level,
just lost to the Brumbies, and now this year they've beaten them twice. They're favourites. Can they get over the hump and take a title?
Yeah, that's the question. It's a big question for them, but I wouldn't bet against them, to be honest. They look really, really good. But then conversely, the Brumbies, you can't be writing off the Brumbies in Aussie rugby. No. It's silly to do so. Just because you don't like maul tries doesn't mean that you dismiss them offhand. They have a very, very effective, dynamic driving maul game that we know. They're lethal from 5 out, but also they have lethal wingers out wide. They're a pretty well balanced team with Nick White pulling strings at 9. They have a lot of good qualities to what they do with the ball, and they're like really, really, really worthy champions last year, and not to be written off, even though they're away from home here. Yeah, they will be game. It's a cup final now.
Yeah, indeed, they have been for the last 5 years. They've been, or more probably, they've been the big dogs of Australian rugby. Yeah. Always the one that's come closest to winning Super Rugby. They have the most pedigree as far as that's concerned. They're actually the only multiple champions in Australian rugby.
There you go.
Way back in 2001 and 2004, and obviously they're the champions of the inaugural Super Rugby AU competition. Yeah. So they've a lot of pedigree, but it does appear that they've been overtaken by the Reds, losing the both meetings, but by the narrowest of margins. And personally, I've been really impressed. They have been a team that's kind of bugged me in the past for being so one-dimensional, but I have been so impressed with them this year. They are clinical, they're more clinical than the Reds, frankly, in terms of just getting tries from visits, and that's not just coming from mauls anymore. They still have that, but they've added such a class game, and their passing is brilliant. Their centres have been phenomenal, but they just look for tries everywhere. They move the ball excellently, and they exploit defensive weakness, and in clutch moments they've come up with brilliant scores.
That's true.
And a variety of different scores, which is not something you'd associate.
Muirhead had a hat-trick actually earlier in the season that was based on that. They went to the mall as a fake out and then spread it wide, and it worked every time. I caught them napping every time because you have to respect them all. So as soon as you have to respect their maul drive, it creates more space for their now very, very dangerous backs as well.
They're exceptionally clinical, and they've really expanded their game brilliantly. And you know, there was a danger this year that the Reds had come in and on that building block start blowing them away, and that last year was the end of it. But no, they have grown as well, and both sides have improved really with each other.
Yeah, and kind of left the others a little behind, considering you had the Western Force were nowhere last year, and now we're nearly in the final this year by just a little improvement. Yeah, and it was like that's where the other two are at, kind of floundering a little and not improving at the same rate as these two worthy finalists.
100%. And yeah, the Reds are coming for their crown, but I don't expect them to release it easy. I think they'll definitely be game for it. As far as the squads are concerned, we don't actually have the squads. It's Tuesday as we're shooting this. As you know, you might have them by the time you're watching this, but we're just going to look at sort of the key men for both sides. And one of the things that strikes me about this game is that there's so many fun matchups
all over the park,
all over it. I mean, it's just
Lolosio, James O'Connor is pretty box office in the 10 shirt.
Yeah, and like for me, it's the centre matchup between, you know, I don't know whether Pataya is going to be on the wing or in the centre, but Hunter Paisami in there potentially with Hamish Stewart or with Jordan Bataya is a great centre partnership. Paisami's been one of the players of the tournament, against Ikitau and Simone, who have been also brilliant. Awesome. And Ikitau has been phenomenal. He might be a Wallaby. That matchup is just salivating.
Swimming in centres suddenly, the Aussies, where they couldn't find one a few seasons ago.
I think their centre stocks are better than the Lions.
Yeah,
I think they're genuinely. I'm more impressed with the Wallaby centres than the Lions centres that they have to choose from. I think they've been awesome, and I'm looking forward to seeing them all have a crack at the test shirt. But from the Reds' perspective, just starting there, I think their key man, their number one, it's hard to look past Taniela Tupou as a difference maker. I mean,
Taniela Tupou versus the Brumbies scrum. It could be the matchup that decides the game yet. We don't know.
James Slipper is a very fine scrummager, but Tupou has been phenomenal, and his 80-minute showing in that first game was unreal. The way he just, like, the Brumbies were ahead, the Reds were down and out, and Tupou, both in the carry game and in the scrum game, dragged them through. I mean, he's
so explosive,
beyond elite, like as far as his capacity to keep going for such a big man. Exceptional and dynamic to a T as well on the ball. If he's given a bit of front football to work with, he's got a hot step, he's got physicality, he can run through teams, and then his bread and butter at the scrum, he's just getting better and better.
It's true. They also have, in terms of halfbacks quality, you know that Nick White's going to be pulling the strings for the Brumbies, but then little Tate McDermott's had a fine season, really fine season, and they play with a lot of tempo, and I think it's going to be interesting to see which team manages to assert themselves first in terms of asserting their game, but a lot will be coming through the nines.
No, totally. Although O'Connor for me is a real linchpin for what this Red side do.
It's kind of a distinction with difference. You have Tate McDermott, kind of the passenger for the leader at 10, and then in the Brumbies you have Nick White kind of leading from 9 Petit General style, with young Lolosio, who has a lot of quality but is still a little green, kind of under his wing a little bit. It's kind of a reversal.
The veterans take the lead, the guys who have the experience, who can read defences, and O'Connor's excellent at that. He manages that team really well, he manages their energy really well. He takes goals when he needs to, he slows the game when he needs to, he speeds things up when he sees it. Like he's very much the general, moving all the chess pieces in the right direction. Like O'Connor's vital for that, and Nick White on the other side.
Exactly. So
McDermott's more of just a tempo generator.
Exactly, which is great, and it's great value, and it's the nine's primary job is passing with good tempo. So there's a lot of quality there in those kind of halfback positions. And then further out wide, obviously you have Jordan Bataya, who, whether he's on the centre or the wing, is going to be good. But just for that Reds outside, you have Daugunu and Bryce Hegarty in great form.
Daugunu was awesome.
Daugunu's been awesome all season. And then on the Brumbies, they have similar things. Like you have Tom Banks at fullback is all class, but like Tom Wright in great form.
Tom Wright, lovely player.
Also Muirhead really keeps grabbing tries. And some nice
assists as well. Does Muirhead? There's lethal all over. They're very clinical both sides and very exciting. The matchups are interesting. The forward battle is interesting as well. You know, we've mentioned the backs, but you know, the Reds back row can be difference makers. I look at Liam Wright and Harry Wilson in particular, but also Fraser McWright. Even Pangamosa has been great, and Salakai Aloto has stepped up this year as well.
Pete Samu in there is mixing it as well.
Yeah, Pete Samu for the Brumbies and Rob Valentini, those would be their main guys. Like Valentini in particular is just physical, and like they'll need that against a good Reds pack. If Valentini can get on top of them and start just winning contacts, that's a huge positive picture for them. And I would say for the Brumbies as well, Ryan Lonergan off the bench, he's been a game winner before.
Just in terms of the last 20 where it could be decided if the other two games are anything to go on.
Could be a key man.
Stacked front, Flau Faianga as well has been awesome. Al Nalatoa as well will be have a good job to do, because the scrum may be under pressure, but those guys are lethal in the loose too.
They're good enough as well, Slipper and Alatoa to shut down the threat of Tupou in the scrum. Slipper as well, that's a huge battle, and you know, there is scope for Slipper to lose that, but you know, club captain, I'd back him to hold it steady for 50 minutes at least, and then hope that the bench options do the same thing. But I think by and large, very evenly matched teams, very similar teams. It's
going to be a matter of inches, as it always is. Then just in terms of, we will do something similar to what we did with Super Rugby Aotearoa in terms of preview, just looking at a few keys to victory, 3 keys to victory for each team that, if they can manage these, they'll probably, the scales will be tipped in their favours, because as it is, as you said with the stats, as you said with the head-to-head, it's toss-up. It's a toss-up, so it's going to be about which team just manages to edge this thing. And from the Reds' point of view, the hosts and the favourites, despite the others being the champs, number one is win that scrum battle. You have Ataniela Tupou, which is just a difference maker in terms of attributes. Like, they're very similar teams all over, but Taniela Tupou is
truly elite, the very top in the world in his position. I mean, really, just Tyg Furlong is the only argument you can make for him not being the best in the world, and it's an open question. He could be as good as Tyg. He looks it. If it's one area in the game that is massively important. I mean, sometimes you can go ages without a scrum happening a game, it cannot be vital. But if it's, you know, your typical game where there's key scrums in midfield at times, if they can
win the territory battle
win pens,
when scrums become pens and pens become lineouts and lineouts become mauls, all of that, it's very difficult to play against that.
It's also one of the things that's just so true about the psychology of rugby, even down under, where, you know, it's all about razzle dazzle and passing. You know, it is a psychological battering to go backwards and lose a scrum consistently. The packs do not take it well, and it very much could be the difference. If it's one area where the Reds have backed themselves as having an edge, if they can get on top and start generating penalties, it could be the difference. It could
very easily be. And then point number two, be more disciplined and punish the Brumbies when they're in ill discipline. That's kind of a two-sided coin. It's can maintain your own discipline, obviously. Don't be compounding errors or giving away silly penalties, but also apply enough pressure and enough squeeze that the Brumbies are coughing up penalties
It's
themselves.
been a problem for the Brumbies all season. You know, the Brumbies were more clinical in that first game, but gave, and even the second game, the same thing against the Reds, taking early leads, giving them back entrances. James O'Connor kicking to threes when they give them the options. I look back to last week, you know, the 21-9 win over the Force. 9 kickable points given up to a team who offered nothing on attack. Like, the Brumbies' discipline is a problem. They need to stop giving away penalties, and from a Reds point of view, that's something to exploit. It's a great in. And James O'Connor's kicking like a dream. Just get the pressure on them, force them to give away those penalties. Mind your own discipline, as they have been doing, but punish that ill discipline with points.
They
can be
beat
key.
the more disciplined team while winning the scrum battle, which is point 1. That'll be a long way. Even if they can just do those 2 keys to victory, that'll go a long way in terms of separating these two sides and in their favour. But
the third point for me is just, for me, this is almost the most key. This is a team in its first final. It's still a young team. Don't tighten up. Be yourselves. Play your game. At their best, this team is free-flowing, it's fluid, it's a joy to watch. Hunter Paisami on the ball is magnificent. They marry speed and power great. They have X-factor all over the field. They need to focus on themselves. They need to focus on the game, not the occasion. Like, they need to acknowledge that the Brumbies are really, really clinical. If they're sort of playing a tentative kicking game, trying to edge the territory battle early doors and playing sort of within themselves, there is scope for them to sort of get an early, like, even if they're edging the tight exchanges, to get like an early 6-point lead or something, but just not really threaten the line and be very, very hesitant to play their own game because they think it's finals footy.
Yeah.
The Brumbies, I think, on the other end, when they get their ins, will take tries.
Yeah.
And I think
because
that's
it's finals footy.
Because it's finals footy.
Indeed,
The Brumbies,
yeah.
they are. I would rely on them to take tries on most, if not all, entrances, or certainly take points on all entrances. They're a very, very clinical team. If the Reds play within themselves, there's a chance for them to be sort of out clinicalized, out whatever the hell that is. But like the way the Wales won games in the Six Nations just by being clinical, the Reds need to be that too. They have great offense, just as good as the Brumbies.
Yeah.
They need to move the ball and beat themselves. Don't tighten up. Just because it's a final doesn't mean you stop playing your game. I think that's vitally important, because there is a narrative.
You see it all the time in club footy. You see it all over the world. Young team in the final, they can often play like suddenly they kick threes when they never did.
Yeah, that's not to say they shouldn't kick threes.
I know
they should, but
that's
it's just
another
an
example of like actually Exeter doing it against Leinster and then going on to lose that game in the thing. Like, you never do it all season, and now in the big game you're going to do it. And it's not your game.
It's little things like not throwing offloads, like not going as wide, like sometimes just being secure and setting up a box kick from midfield when you haven't even probed for the options. You haven't even got Paisami on the ball. They got to do all those things. They got to get all their guys a touch early, play their game, and get comfortable on the big stage in front of their fans at Suncorp. I think it's vital, because that is a concern that I have.
Then just to sum up, win the scrum battle if you're the Reds. Win the scrum battle. Be more disciplined / punish their ill discipline, and don't tighten up / be yourselves. Those are three vital ones, and if they can do even two of the three, they'll be in a great place to win the game. Conversely, then the Brumbies as well, who will have notions of retaining their crown and not giving it up to these young upstarts, definitely, and they have slightly different keys to victory, but keys to victory nonetheless. Number one, be ruthless, clinical, especially in the first half.
This is something that they did in games 1 and 2. They took early leads, and I think it's vital as well when the Reds are a little bit tight in front of their home fans, big occasion, wanting to show up. If they can edge those,
silence the crowd, make them a non-factor with an early lead.
And I would add a stroke on this. Like they've done this both times, so they kind of know what the sus is. Getting on top of them early, winning some midfield exchanges, and getting entrances, and then trusting that offense. Obviously, they have that brilliant line-out maul, but they move the ball so well. Nick White knows the right options. They pick great lines. In Simone and Nicky Tau, they have just a fantastic centre combination that can unpick teams, and lethal finishers out wide. Their passing is phenomenal. They know their way to the try line. Taking early tries and getting on top of them early will be vital. And the stroke that I'd add is not doing what they usually do and giving the Reds back an entrance, keeping the foot on the neck. When they have the Reds rattled early doors, don't let them settle. Keep on them, keep attacking, force the Reds.
Keep the scoreboard ticking over with some threes, and then force them to be the ones that are panicking and making errors.
And maybe all of a sudden the discipline flips and they start giving away pens, and Tupou's looking a little scared, because the Reds are going to be feeling it a little bit, I think. So if they can get on top of them and keep on top of them for that first half and build a real lead and not give it up cheaply, like that,
you want to try and rock their confidence, because it's only a fresh confidence from being in finals in the last couple of years. Like it's a younger team, the Reds. The Brumbies are a bit more assured at this level. They need to be the ones to try and create uncomfortable scenarios for the Reds.
They've started bright the first 2 games. I think they can do it again, and they need to almost start brighter. They need to make it almost 15 plus points instead of just 10 plus to start the game, and really put the pressure on the Reds. That'd be the first point.
Point 2 then, kick better.
Controlling the territory. We talked about this with Chiefs as well, but like in a match between clinical offenses, which both of these are, the side that has the most opportunities to attack is going to be the side that edges it a lot of the time. And that comes back to the kicking game.
Indeed, you saw the downfall of France in the Six Nations was that they're beautifully clinical when they play with the ball, but their kicking game was so abject that they only got like 3 chances in the game, and they lost some of their games because of it. So you need to kick really well, kick for territory really well.
And they've got lovely strokers of a ball. Nick White's going to take the lead on this. Obviously, his box kicking's vital.
But Lolosio has a good kicking game in him as well.
And likewise Tom Banks.
Tom Banks, big cannon of a boot from fullback.
So I'm looking at Banks's big kick to exit, getting down the field, and then just little moments. Like obviously they'll probe, they'll attack. They're a very good attacking team, but from the midfield, you're looking at little kicks from either Lolosio, but Nick White taking the lead, just isolating. Maybe Dunguna's a bit high. Maybe there's a bit of weakness to be exposed in the backfield. Pegging the ball in the corners and getting and forcing the Reds to exit early, and then setting up your picture, your attacking maul, your attack. That's their key to the entrance. And if they can work the kicking game to generate more sort of attacks for themselves than the Reds get, that's a huge key.
They'll
for
win
them.
the game then, that thing. And then point number 3, probably self-explanatory given just the season, but fix their discipline issues, or just keep. I don't know what you'd even say. Like, it's tough. Discipline goes further than just penalties. Like, there's a disciplined performance where the penalty count is low and the defensive line is set and the scrum is tight and the line out is working like an oiled machine. Like, discipline's broad. But generally, their penalty count's been too high. It's cost them in their 2 meetings with this exact team in previous ones. They've got to learn from it. They've got to be cooler heads prevail.
It's all about preventing the amount of Reds entrances that you give up.
Yeah.
And the kicking game is one way to do that, but that'll all be nullified if you're giving them a load of penalties from midfield to get them into your half.
It's just kick them straight into your territory, and now you're defending.
You've got to tighten up. You've got to mind your P's and Q's. Don't compete. I mean, there were a couple against the Reds the last time they met where you thought, maybe, the guy was in on the ball and they called him tackle assist. And it's a harsh
those
call.
Ones are harsh.
But you got to not be on the margins in this stuff. You defend well, trust your D. Don't, if you're in the midfield, don't be silly, because both of these teams from the red zone are lethal.
Yeah.
And if you give up penalties from the midfield could almost turn into, 3 or 7 points very quickly.
Yeah.
So they've got to be very, very careful. They've got to really tighten up that penalty count. It has been the key differential between the two sides, is that the Brumbies have just given up way more penalties in the big games and the big moments, and I don't think they're going to win the game without tightening that up.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's unforced. They need to some of this stuff is unforced.
Like
last week, I'm just thinking, why?
Every now and then, like we were talking about in the Crusaders in the Aotearoa preview, like the Crusaders will give away penalties if you're putting them under pressure. If they're running a few nice phases, then Whitelock's going to stick his hands in there, but they're going to be wily enough to stick his hands in there just outside of the red zone so he doesn't get sin bin, but he doesn't all that kind of stuff. But some of those Brumbies penalties have not been those kinds of penalties. They've been kind of nothing's really doing in the middle of the field, and you're a little off your feet there, or you're not supporting your weight in that ruck, and it's a penalty, and it's a needless penalty. Nothing was doing. They were about to kick at the next phase. Why would you do that? Yeah. Like, even if you got the steal, you'd just be in the middle of the field. Like, it's be smart with it. Maintain your discipline. Don't go for everything necessarily. Try and be calm. Be calm in the heat of battle, and make them be the ones that are making the mistakes and panicking. Don't be the ones to do it for them.
Indeed. So to recap then on the Brumbies, they're sort of 3 keys to victory: ruthless clinicality in the first half, building that lead, kicking better, controlling the territory, owning the amount of where the ball is, and hence getting the more attacks. And then 3, fixing the discipline, not giving those easy entrances to the Reds. If they can do all 3 of those, they're going to be in a great position themselves to get the dub.
Yeah. With all that said, who do you see winning this one?
Yeah, this one for me, like the last one, I was thinking Crusaders. This one for me, I can see both arguments playing out in my mind. There's good arguments for both teams. I think that the Reds have probably the better X factor. I think in Tupou and even in Paisami, I would say they have probably the 2 form players in the competition overall. And that's huge. Mm-hmm. The Brumbies have nous, they have clinicality, they have pedigree, and it's the final. Then the Reds have Suncorp, and Suncorp's just such a tough place to win if you're not the home team.
That's true.
It's a toss up in my mind. It really is, and maybe give the edge to the Reds. They've won both times this season, but I wouldn't count out the Brumbies at all. This is like a 1-score game again for me.
Well, someone's going to win by 2 points.
Yeah,
that's what we think.
Indeed,
I'm going to say that the Reds do see it home, and that Brad Thorne gets his just reward for building.
It's been building very nicely for him, hasn't it?
Project, finally unseating the Brumbies as the Kings of Oz, but maybe not, because the Brumbies are you can constantly want them to not get it done, but they do get it done, and you have to admire them for it, and that's been the story so far. But either way, it's a fantastic game. It's definitely the cream of the crop rising in Australia, and it's going to be a great watch. The other the 2 regular season games were fantastic, and this is going to be no different. It's going to be a great contest.
It's 11:15 Saturday morning. That's Irish time. Obviously, it's Saturday evening prime time in Australia. Just a box office game between 2 box office teams that both play attacking footy. I wouldn't bet against a high scoring cliffhanger box office brilliance for a final. I think it's going to have everything. So if you have the means at all, tune in. I believe World Rugby are broadcasting it where it's not licensed. We're getting it from World Rugby's website, and they're awesome for doing that. So I've really enjoyed watching the games recently, and I'm just really looking forward to this crescendo between these 2 great teams.
Absolutely. All right, with that we will move on.
Yes, indeed.
Right, and next up we're just going to do a brief bit of housework and go back in time a little and look back on the Women's Six Nations, which reached its denouement in our absence. And yeah, there was a new look format that featured kind of a bit like the Sevens. You had a first and second place playoff, third and fourth place playoff, and a fifth and sixth place playoff after only 2 games played by each, I think, in terms of the round, 3 rounds, but 2 games played by each. No prizes for guessing who the title went to. It was England in the end, who saw off France in a very tight 10-6 win in the final. Then in the second place final, Ireland took third and won the title of best of rest in this comp with a comfortable 25-5 win over Italy, and then Scotland edged Wales in what might have been the best game of the lot, 27-20. It was a bit of a banger in the fifth and sixth place playoff. So yeah, leaving that the table looking England, France, gap, Ireland, Italy.
Well, there you go. France second, Ireland third, and France beat Ireland 56-15 in Dublin.
And then even looking like Ireland absolutely pumped Wales the week before, and we're feeling pretty good about it. So Ireland got an injection of pace because the Sevens team that were gearing up for the Olympics and are professional, by contrast to the 15s team, they were kind of, a few of them were injected into the squad, and it did improve them a lot, but they were comfortably second best in that contest with France. And France, to be honest, even though it was a tight affair in the Stoop, was where that 10-6 game was, it never really looked like
England
it was going France's way.
England were on top of them. They kicked a kick to make it 7-6, and England responded to make it 10-6, and France just didn't look like they could breach that England D, and so they couldn't. There was another game though that the England and France played, which was it was interesting. They went to Lille because they'd done the match in Twickenham. This was after the Six Nations finished, and they were playing out a very interesting game, which was 17-15 in favour of England on 62 minutes, when the floodlights in Lille shut off entirely. And I don't know, there was rumour going around that this was like a timed thing, that it was just like a mistake, that they timed the floodlights to shut off at X hour. And so they did, and then they couldn't turn them back on again. But yeah, the women literally in this empty fanless stadium were playing out a humdinger of a game when, with 20 minutes to go and the game in the balance, the lights shut off and left the two teams in the dark in what was like,
both metaphorically
and
then
indeed,
literally.
I was going to say it was like quite like a poetic thing.
Yeah, there's symbolism all over.
Yeah, indeed.
You can
just
read
in
into that
terms
what
of,
you will. Why is there routinely horrendous unprofessional errors that go into the women's game? Like, I go back to our own,
just from an organisation or administrative
like there was a story
just,
last year or the year before of the women not there's no hot water in the dressing room. I think that was in Dublin actually. After a game there was no hot water for the showers after they played a test match, and it's like, what? How?
Well, this is very much a gobsmack kind of thing as well. You kind of think, geez, the lights turned off and they couldn't turn them back on. Anyway, they ended the game and declared England the winners because it was after 60 minutes, and such is the protocol. But yeah, a real shame. Yeah. And I gotta say, I mean, not to sugarcoat it, but I don't think, I mean, there's danger in being melodramatic, but it wasn't a great window for the women's game. The sides are completely far apart. The quality of the games is lacking. And actually, just from a fan point of view, from a neutral point of view, at the very top level between England and France, I think defences are, improving faster than offences at the moment.
That's why you get 10-6s and stuff.
Tighter games as well. But, with the men's game on the return from such a hiatus, they had that Autumn Nations Cup, which was very much characterised by similar kinds of issues. Yeah. So I don't think there's any case for pressing the panic button, but I definitely think the women's game is a mess. And even though it didn't take place during the Six Nations, it didn't.
Which was improvement.
Yeah, but it didn't attract any attention because all the early games were absolute slaughterings, pretty much to a game, right up until that last weekend, where there were still comfortable victories really for England and Ireland, and it was a bit flat, and I think the women's game is in need of something like a little bit of impetus.
The proposal of that.
That said, there is something coming. That whole new tournament system, and I definitely think that there's even I think there's scope for seeing how that goes. What did they call it again? They had a name for it. It was like something
Women's
extremely
15
bland.
or something.
Women's 15. Yeah, that's right.
So.
Something extremely
Women's
bland.
XV. Women's XV.
Yeah, women's 15 is fine, but that's coming in. That'll see more teams playing each other. But I think even at a lower level, it would be great to see more games between teams. And I'm still on this thing in my head.
The best games I've seen in the women's game are actually coming from the Premiership these days. I've tuned into a few of those, Harlequins women and all that, Saracens women playing. Like they're doing a great job. Some of the Irish girls are getting employed over there. It's why the England Test team has its relative success. It's why they're pulling. And
it's
away.
a better product than what the Test level is matching.
It is,
but I think I'm still on this thing like at the women's level, why is there a Six Nations? Like, why can't Spain get a look in? Does any of this make sense? This sort of historical thing where we all play these teams at wildly different levels, play each other every year, and then like you don't get enough games between Canada and England, but you also don't get enough games at that lower level. Like, it would be interesting to see other teams from around
Scotland
the world.
v Romania,
South Africa's women's team
these,
isn't great, but maybe they could play South Africa and all of this stuff. Like, I just think. I think
getting it wrong. There's ring fencing goes on to keep and there's definitely protectionist policies from World Rugby and just the powers that be in general when it comes to the men's game and the Six Nations. Like, there's always going to be roadblocks thrown up if you're going to do whatever it is, global calendars, anything that compromises the current Six Nations will not be tolerated because it amounts to, for all the unions involved, it amounts to like 60 to 70% of their revenue for the year.
Yeah, it's more than that. Actually, it's more than that. It's about the tradition and history that's been forged between those nations over
100 years.
100 years, indeed, and then obviously later with Italy, etc. But it's a huge foundational component of all of those unions. It's not for the women's game. The women's game is its own thing and needs to forge its own traditions. It's only just becoming professional now, and I don't think that trying to copy the men's game and force.
And certainly what they'd been doing up till this year, which is just playing them side by side with the men's game and completely burying them news-wise, like
intrigue-wise.
It doesn't work for any of the teams in it. Like,
do something. I definitely think women's 15 is a positive, but do something completely different. It might make a bit of sense, because at the moment it's kind of at sea a little bit, it seems to me. At the Test level, I definitely think it's a need.
What's coming up now is the World Cup qualifiers, which have yet to be finished, certainly from an Irish point of view. They have games against Spain, the unknown quantity that they are. We know that they're probably better than nearly half the teams in that Six Nations.
But when have they last played a competitive game?
Exactly, so it could be completely different. You know, we're leaving teams like that out in the lurch while kind of, I don't know, not involving them and perpetuating this Six Nations kind of format that is just in the shadow of the men in more way than others, and it doesn't serve the game properly. We were advocating for this new window in terms of just separating it from the men's Six Nations, which is its own entity. The women's game doesn't need to be operating as a curtain raiser to it. It just won't work. It hasn't worked over the last few years. So maybe some rethink in terms of how to structure these tournaments.
New competition format's always good. What I will say is that one of the shining lights, I'm very interested in what Italy are doing as a project. They have basically, it's like a bit like Japan in the 90s, but basically they're working entirely on their skill set. They never kick the ball.
And it was a funny spectacle when they played we were watching that game against Ireland at the end, and it was a bit too easy for our girls to punish them for it because they were a bit naive, but it was fun all the same time.
I mean, they're not there yet, and there's you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, as they say. But they're relentlessly not kicking and attacking from everywhere, and they did against Ireland end up making something farcical like 27 handling errors. But I'm very intrigued with it as a project, and I hope they stick with it, because working on the skill set, it's an area that the women's game can improve, and as defences improve, one of the things that hasn't come in is sort of the screen passing and the sharp movement of the ball.
Modern offensive shape.
Stretching the whole width of the field and backing the skill set. And if Italy can stick with just trying to attack using the whole width of the field, backing their own skill set and running from everywhere, that error count is going to drop, and it's going to drop again, and it's going to drop again. They're going to get better and better at it, and if they can be sort of the most skilled team, keep honing that skill set, getting better and better, I think they could make for an interesting picture going forward. So I am actually excited by the project that's going on with Italy. They definitely
I definitely have more optimism about their women's team than their men's team.
100%. I agree.
But generally, that story from the lights being shut off, just emblematic of some of the issues that are affecting the women's game.
Not enough thought going into it. But that said, there is change coming, so all that's caveated. And even the issues with the on-field stuff, the men's game had a bit of that in the Autumn Nations Cup. There's a lot of rust there too.
So you can take that pinch of salt. But as it is, England were champions going in. They remain champions despite the new format.
Massive congratulations to them.
Big congrats to them. They are raising the bar for the women's game pretty much single-handedly in Europe at the moment, with France kind of trying to cling on to them. And France, bloody exciting as well. They
Great
absolutely
team,
hosed Argos, and Argos had got some buzz around them after the Wales showing. They were taking down a fair few pegs with that showing. It was tough viewing, but France look a really good, exciting team as well. And you can only play what's in front of you. And to be fair, those two teams have been producing the best contests of the tournament for the last few years, and long may that continue.
Absolutely.
With that, I suppose we will move on to club rugby and European club rugby, where we will have to kind of look back on a semi-final weekend in both competitions in Europe. We'll start with the big show, the main show, which is the Champions Cup. And we had two crackers really. On Saturday we had the all-French affair of Toulouse v Bordeaux Bègles, and it finished Toulouse 21, Bordeaux 9. Yeah. And it was a fair result.
It was actually quite a similar game to the Australian semi-final that finished with the exact same result, where the Brumbies were 21-9 winners over the Western Force. Mm-hmm. And the Bordeaux, similar to the Western Force, were quite good at hustling, quite good at slowing the play up, competitive in many areas.
The halfbacks played well.
Good halfbacks, kicked well, smart team, but just no real offense, no real bite to their game.
Sure, Lamb had to come so far infield to just get a sniff of the ball.
Yeah, Ben Lamb was not put in space once, despite being an exciting player. Their centres really couldn't pass the ball, and they were just left to as it was really against Bristol and Racing before. Those games were just kick fests, and they were just edging those. Yeah. But they faced a team that were more clinical than them, and despite Toulouse not totally impressing, they were able to take tries.
Well, it was a wet weather. It was a wet weather game in Toulouse, and that did affect things. It was a little slower. You had guys like Colby who were just never in space at all. But when he got the ball, there was a little rise in anticipation. He's just that special. But Toulouse were the side that they bookended their performance with two nice tries, and that was the difference.
Indeed, Lavelle looking very sharp, Colby looking very sharp, Dupont taking a nice score. They are a lovely offensive team too.
Actually, I thought both Arnolds played very well in tandem.
Rory and Richie.
They were very good.
Yes, and Peter Aki as well.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Awesome at 12. Key difference maker. Yeah, they just had a few more tools in their locker than Bordeaux, who are finding it. They found their ceiling really this season in terms of they did very well to get the semi. I thought. Yes, they were just a little bit outclassed by Toulouse on across the park.
And it wasn't. It would have been generous describing it as a cracker. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't a cracker. Actually, Medard was doing his typical thing of good in the first half, tired in the second, but playing 80 minutes for some reason, and actually being loose. Entmack I thought was pretty poor. He was keeping Bordeaux in it sometimes with some of his poor shots. He kicked one out in the full. It was just it wasn't I'm still not wholly convinced by Toulouse, but they have managed their way to the final, and you've got to be in it to win.
They have offensive chops, and they've capacity to take tries, which will always give them a chance.
And they have European pedgree as well, which will stand to them. But
100%. But another side with European pedigree was our own Charges, another 4-star team, and man, oh man, La Rochelle did a number on Leinster in
semi-final too on Sunday.
It was a proper gut punch for us as Leinster fans. It wasn't one we necessarily didn't see coming.
No, it was partly one that we were expecting, but it still doesn't make it any more palatable.
Yes, my fears were kind of laid to rest a little when we beat Exeter. It was such an impressive performance, having been 14-0 down. But we knew this would always be a step up. And man, oh man, La Rochelle, despite conceding early, really, and conceding a yellow card early, managed the game so well. They have some self-belief, and they know the game really well. I was a little worried when I heard Robin McBride talking earlier in the week from a Leinster point of view about tiring them out and keeping the ball in play. And O'Gara himself was making the point in the media. It's that's out of date. That's 2 years old as a thought. The top couture has gone to another level. The ball and play time is more, not less, than what goes on in the Pro 14.
And what ended up happening was Leinster ran out of ideas. They were exposed for what we've been doing for the last pretty much 2 years, which is playing a forward-oriented game. Leinster like to think of themselves as razzle-dazzle, and even in
that's the tradition of the club.
It is the tradition, and even Jack Conan was citing that, going we can win games ugly up front, or we can do the more Leinster thing of throwing the ball around. it's nice that you think that, but the evidence on the pitch isn't that. Like, we haven't been playing that game. We've been sucking guys in with James Ryan carries and these guys getting over the gain line before throwing the passes, and the passes haven't been as accurate this season. And
they modelled themselves a little on Exeter this season after Exeter did the double, and they probably felt when they beat Exeter that they were now in a real good position to kick on. But the top couture has been different this year.
It has. And what the repeated thing that ended up happening throughout the game was that Leinster were going off nine, and rather than sucking La Rochelle in, even with good carries, like bit of footwork from Cian Healy, Tyg Fern, all of the guys were carrying pretty well, but we were sucking our own men in. And it would arrive at the third or fourth breakdown, and there'd be one sloppy clean out man versus one accurate poach man for La Rochelle. And that was it. They just gobbled it up every single time. There were a few would-be moments. There was obviously Lowe's, the cross kick to Lowe that could have, would have, should have been, just didn't bounce for him. There was the half break that ended up with Larmer on the wing, flicking it back inside to Luke McGrath, who turfed it.
Pass was too low, and Luke McGrath still should have caught it. But in an ideal world, that's a try.
And
likewise,
the Ryan Baird one, which was probably the kind of watership moment, or the kind of the revealing. It was already like, considering Leinster started great, like started like a house on fire, racked up the penalties, racked up the phases, got a yellow card, crashed over for 7-0. Awesome. And then from there, La Rochelle kind of took control, and the fact that there was only a 1 point deficit in it or a 1 point lead for Leinster at half time, it felt like momentum was going that way, which was why in the second half, when that ball bounced in front of Ryan Baird, you think, gobble that up and go in for a cheap score, maybe we can get the edge on these boys.
It was off like a box kick or something, but it just bounces up, and the ball's here, and Baird sort of tries to grab at it like this and turfs it instead of just palm under it and bat it up. And then, like, Baird runs 40 metres faster than some wingers. If he gets that ball, he runs in and takes a cheap score. And that was what I was thinking. Leinster,
what happened from that scrum then was that they got their first scrum penalty, and it was a mighty one. And that was just the turning of the game. It felt like Leinster's heads dropped while La Rochelle's chests puffed out in that big swing. And from there, like, Leinster were nowhere. Like, to be honest, it was a 9 point deficit at the end. That flattered Leinster. Like, the second half was all La Rochelle.
Indeed, and I'm just thinking, like, Leinster, like, if you want to be at the top level, clinicality is so important in rugby these days. I think of Wales and the Six Nations. I think of some of the other teams
Crusaders
in Australia as well. Like, teams that grab tries from all kinds of different places, and Leinster had opportunities to do that. They had, that classic line break on the wide channels followed by scrum half tracking run try. It was there for them. They turfed it. They had a crossfield kick try, was there for them, but the ball didn't bounce. That's just one of those things. But even, like, in an ideal world, maybe the kick is a little better, maybe it's a little flatter, maybe it goes straight to hand. And then they had that Baird try, which is just one of these freak moments where the ball pops up. Like, everyone calls Wales lucky, but the difference between Wales and all these other teams that aren't as clinical, and I know it's club rugby versus test rugby, but, like, the reason that Wales is so good is because in those freak moments where the ball's there, pretty much to a moment, they just grab the try. There's a try, there it is. And Leinster need way more of that. They need to focus, like, if there's a theme for next season for Leinster, it needs to be about find tries from everywhere. Like, that would be my theme. But
because that whole sequence when actually James Lowe was a little unlucky to get sin-binned, but while he was sin-binned, there was a period of exiting from them where they were just going in a vicious loop of steal a line out very impressively, give it to Luke McGrath, who's terrible at box kicking, have him kick it like 4 metres forward, another line out, steal that line out, get to the base of the ruck, box kick again, gain another 5 metres, steal that line out, box kick again, and they managed to get this line out off, and they score from it. And it was just
we've talked a lot about Leinster, and it's just us venting, and it's a thing that happens when you care about a team and they lose. I was going to say let you down.
They didn't let me down.
That's a ridiculous thing to say because they've dealt such success to us. But it was a bitter pill, but we should talk about La Rochelle as well.
Awesome.
And they are a very complete looking team.
Skelton's second half showing. Monstrous.
Skelton is monstrous, and you know what? Australia are going to have to start looking at him as long as he keeps looking like the best lock in the world, because it's kind of crazy. He's like, for a guy of his size to put in an 80-minute shift as well, and like still making plays, Itoji like plays towards the end of the game. Like when Leinster were broken, I think it was Baird or somebody tried to carry from under his own sticks. Skelton just grabs a hold of him. On like 78 minutes, grabs the ball, strips it, and they have it again.
He scored that final nail in the coffin try as well. That was him. He was awesome.
Victor Vito, Greg Aldrett. What a special team this is.
And then Gordon off the bench, brilliant as well. Like, they are my firm favourites currently. I think they look much better team than Toulouse right
I
now.
agree, yeah.
I think they do. As much they look as much like to be honest, yeah, we've been criticising Toulouse all season as being like, I'm not fully convinced. And to be honest, when we were turning that as an introspective, I was not fully convinced by Leinster this season either, and I felt a little guilty talking to fans of other teams about it because they just have so much success and they win the league and stuff, and we were crowned champions before I felt we'd even played a decent game. And then it came against Exeter, and some of those fears were allayed. But
it was certainly very tough to argue after that game. It definitely papered over some cracks, but La Rochelle just special. I would shout out Torreira Carbarlo as well. They moved the ball so well.
The contrast between the speed from the base from Carbarlo versus what McGrath was providing Leinster was night and day. And there's a false narrative in this country that it's like, oh, Leinster were out muscled again or something, and it's like,
well, they were
amongst other things. Like in terms of the tempo of the pass and the tempo of attack, La Rochelle looked much more crisp and accurate than Leinster did.
They moved the ball
Leinster
were
well. Sloppy in how they were executing those passes, and that's why they weren't going to hand at the end. And whereas La Rochelle looked crisp, clean and controlled, they knew what they were trying to do.
They have a sharp team, they've danger everywhere as well, and you'd be hard pressed to bet against them going into the final.
Maybe their first final. They don't have the same pedigree, but they
their first semi-final too.
Exactly, they look a better team.
They look a great team.
They certainly look a better pack, better tight five. I would be surprised to see Toulouse beat them.
Well, the way Toulouse do it is
play
similar to Leinster, except take those tries.
Yeah.
That's it. Like Toulouse have quality as well.
They do.
The two Arnolds in the locks are not to be sniffed at. They're fine players.
No.
They play nicely with one another. They link up with each other.
They're true. They were working well in tandem.
Like they're in the back garden in Australia. They
potentially. But then are two Arnolds worth one skeleton these days?
Yeah, it's a good Aussie matchup, isn't it? You look at Aussie and their lock options, and they must be looking at Toulouse and
La Rochelle
and thinking like, well, geez, when 2023 comes rocking, we may have to come knocking on the door here. Not to say they don't have a lock option for themselves, but if none of those three go to a World Cup and Salakaya Loto does, you're like,
it's true. It's true.
But they were both deserved winners, both comfortably better than their opposition, and it's as much as it stung from a Leinster fan. The prospect of a La Rochelle Toulouse final is a mouthwatering one, and
it's probably reflective of we haven't seen top coutures because they haven't been broadcasting it, but it's looked like attacking rugby's returned and they've looked the best teams in it. And to be honest, it's found out like the Pro 14 we were always calling foul of, but even the Premiership is a little looser than they would have you believe.
Yeah, and the Premiership, I would harken back to all the way back when rugby restarted, and they were determined to finish last season.
Yeah,
like they didn't even close out there. They didn't even play condense condense it. That's what they did in the Pro 14. Play like a few more regular season games and then go into the finals. They played everything, and they were doing midweek matches, and then they had the Autumn Nations Cup,
and then they were injuring man to the laggies.
And it did end up they didn't time it right. Whereas the top coutures just cancelled last season, started at a reasonable time, and now they're kind of peaking.
They look the best too, and it's fitting that there are two French. It's an all French final in Twickenham, which is a bit of a laugh, but much as we'd have liked to have been there, if I'm honest, I think the top four but not the top two, that's probably where Leinster have been this season. There's work-ons for them. They're still at the top table, they're still a bloody good team, but work-ons. And La Rochelle are the new kids on the block who've been building steadily for years. Like everyone's waxing lyrical about Rog, rightly, he's injected a lot to them, but John O'Gibbs has done a great job with them for the last few years as well, and they've been a project that's been growing. Like even from the first time they appeared in the Challenge Cup, I was impressed, and I think with the little Kiwi spine to them, I think
Rog has added a mindset dimension from the Crusaders.
I've heard Vito talk about it, where he's just very, very impressed with the attention to detail that he's got them going on. Like he's improved their defence no end. He's just got them a little bit more dialed in, those top 2 inches, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them claim their first star.
Yeah, absolutely. The Challenge Cup also had a couple of semi-finals. Leicester 33, Ulster 24 in Welford Road. A crazy tale of two halves this game. Ulster were on top, and then Leicester came back. I tell you, Ellis Genge and George Ford made a real good last gasp case for themselves in the Lions. I know we had that talk at the top of the show, but both of them made a case for themselves, really and truly.
Genge in particular was awesome. I thought, I know Ford had those lovely passes in the second half, but he was a little nowhere in the first, and I don't know. Like it's,
you're not having the George Ford.
I'm just not having the George Ford talk, but I will have the Ellis Genge one. What I will also say is just it's a baffling thing to watch Ulster blow games, lose games, disappear in games. Like Cooney got knocked out by that random blow from Nadolo, which was unfortunate at the beginning of the second half. But that didn't explain the vanishing act that every one of their players did for the 20 minutes that ensued.
It comes back to a fatigue thing that results from just being a little slight in the tight five in my mind. Like I remember watching those scrums in the first half where Ulster were doing okay, but they were trying to hold on in the scrum, and that you could see the energy draining from them in those scrums, and then they were trying to maintain a breakneck speed to catch Leicester. And Leicester did give up some tries and they did look very good, but there were moments there in that second half where they looked gassed. Like Mathewson came on, and everyone says that the game changed when Mathewson came on and Cooney was much better. But like what I was noticing was like when he was getting to rucks, his team weren't in shape.
Yeah,
they were all looking really tired.
Like I think it was the second, like he box kicked the first time, but then the second bit of possession he had when he just come on, he looked to go the short side quickly, and he looked up and there was no one there, and then he's flipped out to the open side. There was no one there either. Look back. And then eventually hit one runner who finally offered himself, and he just got trucked up, and then they ultimately kicked from the next ruck. And it was like, oh, well, we're just box kicking. It's like, are you?
Yeah.
Or is the whole line moving at no miles per hour?
They looked so tired. They looked so tired, crazy tired, gassed in that second half. And then hence, they got the ball and they really didn't want to use it. And from the midfield, they were box kicking everything. And the box kicks were like either a little shallow or just a little, like they were neither one thing nor another.
They weren't good.
And Leicester just exploited it. I mean, Ulster gave them 3 or 4 entrances, but basically you just kept kicking them the ball. It receded into their shell and genuinely looked gassed. And they never had a response, and Leicester were able to pick them apart then because they were so tired.
And I would make Leicester firm favourites for the comp now.
Leicester are a great team.
They've been growing pretty much since they got rid of Jordan Murphy. They've been growing back to a decent level.
So there's a nicer way to say that. Borthwick seems to be doing a great job. There's a nicer way to say that.
There was a problem with Leicester's ethos.
There was.
It was serving them in. Very nearly got them relegated, and I think that has slapped a bit of something into them, and they definitely they look a new entity now. A fair few good bits of quality as well throughout their team, and just more fitness than that Ulster team ultimately.
More physicality too. Just a big tight five. Ulster were struggling to cope. Although I will say Big Ian Henderson acquitted himself well and did his Lions credentials no harm too.
It's true.
The other game was just the funniest match you'd ever see between Bath and Montpellier.
Bath 10, Montpellier 19. It was 16-10 at half time, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and then it was just
the whole second half. The whole second half took place on the Montpellier line with Bath picking and going, and like literally 40 minutes of it, and most of it was 16-10. It was a one-score game, and they were just pick and go. You got held up a few times, knocked a few balls, got turned over a few times.
It was even funnier.
But soon enough, they were back.
Yeah,
and they didn't once try anything. No. They never once even.
They didn't even play off 9. Like it was all pick and goes. It wasn't even off Spencer. It was just the forwards smashing into the bigger pack that are Montpellier, and like Montpellier aren't that good. Like they're not even in the repechage currently in the top 14s. We know them well from the top tier of Europe. Like Leinster have pretty much written the book on how to beat the Montpellier mercenaries. They're big, they're old, they're overweight. Run them around. They're very tough. Don't run into them, but run them around. And actually, Bath did that in the middle third. Like they put together a few nice first phase set plays.
Looking good, Spencer looking good.
Yeah, all of their backs linked very well. Watson looking good. Like they looked good in the middle third, and then the second they got to the red zone, they just stopped playing rugby and got turned over. And then 102-year-old Bismarck Duplessis comes in, looks like a world beater, grabbing important steals. Apart from the one time they isolated him off set piece, and he looked very slow on the turn because he's old.
Yeah.
And they managed to make that line break, get all the way up to the 5, and then stop playing rugby again. And Montpellier managed to kick a kick of the death to put a shit out beyond the one score that was in it for the whole duration. But it was a bizarre spectacle. And Montpellier deserved winners despite being kind of a bit daft at times themselves.
They weren't great. They spent the whole second half defending. But Bismarck does deserve great credit for those steals. And in general, they deserve great credit for withstanding it. But from Bath's point of view, it was, like for me, they've been improving for a while. I've been watching them with curiosity and anticipation. They took a massive step back, and finals footy to recede so heavily into your shell and to never fire a shot.
Spencer kicking, like he's not even a place kicker, but he's taking their place kicks.
Yeah, that's a problem too. But they were on the line, and they had penalty advantages, and they never even tried like a crossfield kick
or something.
They never tried anything other than picking and going, and 40 minutes of it, and they couldn't cross the line. Like after 20, they never changed, and I just thought it was absolutely
It was
bizarre
a
to watch, and a
bewildering
real
display.
step back, in their development
rather than progress. And
they need to learn from it.
Well, it leaves the final as Leicester v Montpellier in Twickenham on Friday night. I'd make the Tigers favourites in that one myself. I don't know about you.
Probably. I would say probably. Yeah. Probably have more
Nadolo return v Montpellier now. That'll be fun.
That'll be an interesting one. What I will say is that Andre Pollard is back, so that's a game changer.
That's a game changer too. Although he might be in South Africa at the time.
I don't think he's allowed to be if he has a final to play.
That's true.
Yeah, no, he won't be. The Lions is until July. He won't be allowed to leave. Yeah. So anyway, Twickenham is going to be the host for both those finals, as we say. Apparently 10,000 are going to be allowed in.
That's what they're saying. 10,000 will be able to buy tickets for each game.
May 21st and 22nd.
That's Friday, Saturday games.
Yeah, I dare say unvaccinated Irishmen will not be in the offing as far as those tickets are concerned. But we don't have a team involved, so we needn't worry.
That's fine.
Yes. Listen, those finals will be going ahead. But yes, that was the story of the semi-final weekend in Europe. Yeah,
absolutely. And then there were 4 left in either comp.
Indeed. There is other club rugby to talk about in European club rugby. We had the Rainbow Cup kicking off. Munster got a big win over Leinster in advance of that game. Leinster were resting their players for the loss they had booked in next week. And
27-3 away win in the RDS, as good as Munster can boast in the last.
As good as they've ever done.
Yeah.
18-0 was their biggest win in the RDS prior to that, and they won 27-3. Destroying a young Leinster halfback.
That wasn't the only weird result, as Dragons absolutely pumped Scarlets 52-32 as well.
What a game.
And Benetton massacred Glasgow 46-19 in another weird one.
There were some mad results in the old Rainbow Cup. Ulster Connacht was definitely the game of the round.
100%.
Connacht edged it 26-24 and used I think the best ever use of a captain's challenge.
It's a relatively new thing, but they captain's challenged because it was initially ruled that Marmion after a break had spilled it, but upon challenge it was revealed that it was knocked out illegally through hands on the deck, penalty, go to the corner,
score the
winning try.
Captain's challenge for the win.
Yeah.
I should mention at this point that the competitions have been separated, and that as we all know, South Africa can't travel anymore, so their teams are playing an isolated competition.
That's right.
Which is interesting because there's been rumour of them joining the Champions Cup next year. And the new Champions Cup format was announced as 8 teams from the Premiership, Top 14 and Pro 14/16. So I wonder if they're going to think about using the South African Rainbow Cup as a potential qualifier to get maybe 1 or 2 of those teams in. It's possible. But that tournament began as well. The Sharks managed a great comeback against the Stormers, the indisciplined Stormers who kept giving away cards.
Indeed.
But there was some lovely play.
That was. Yeah. And wasn't the highlight of that round? There was definitely Ryan Hugo's 6-minute hat trick for the Sharks.
What about that? Yes.
Big second rower scoring 3 tries in pretty much as many minutes. He was just popping up everywhere.
It was absolutely crazy. 3 different tries as well. Yeah, I was like, is that the same dude? It is. He's in again. It's got to be some kind of record.
Yeah, I've never seen a rower be that I don't know why. It was
quickest
awesome.
I remember was Craig Gilroy in about 15 minutes against Italy off the bench. But 6 minutes?
6 minutes
for a lock?
Nuts. Yeah,
it was wild.
In other news, the Bulls beat the Lions 22-9, as is tradition.
Yeah.
And then elsewhere, Edinburgh beat Zebra 24-18, and Ospreys beat Cardiff 36-14 in a game that was so pointless, and the worst news of the whole comp came from it when George North hobbled off at around the 50-odd minute mark and will now miss the Lions tour, as we were mentioning earlier in the show. So that is one of the arguments against the Rainbow Cup right there. But the rest of it, there were some good spectacles. I'm sure Ryan Hugo is probably feel buzzing for the Rainbow Cup with a lovely hat trick. But it's an intriguing one. We will obviously be keeping abreast of it ourselves. We'll just be watching it out of intrigue. I don't know if Leinster will be featuring now after that 27-3 home defeat. But
they're still in it. There's still a final. I mean, we still have to give it our all. There's definitely intrigue going forward. But less intrigue than honestly any of the other leagues.
True.
Where things are getting to the business end.
Absolutely.
In the Premiership, Bristol did have a home defeat to Exeter. Exeter were comfortable winners in that game. They were without some of their men though, and then they do remain atop the table. 4 rounds to go. They're still, I think, 6 points clear. Eight points clear of Exeter.
66 plays 58, and then Sale and Quins on 55 and 54 are the current top 4.
Very good.
And then you have Northampton 50 points just behind them. London Irish 42, Bath 41, Leicester 39. All kind of they're in the mix more for the Challenge Cup spots than the top Cup.
There's 8 teams in it now. So Wasps, Gloucester, Newcastle, and Worcester at the moment are the teams to miss out. Wasps just 3 points behind Leicester, but you would back the Tigers to see that home. And in fact, if I believe, well, no, I'm not actually. No, if Leicester win the Challenge Cup, that will do it for them anyway. And
yes,
knock
that's right. That's right.
Go behind.
And then just as far as this weekend's games, there are games going ahead this weekend in the Premiership. Of them, Sale Leicester on Friday, pretty good game. Northampton v Gloucester on Saturday. Likewise, Bath Bristol on Saturday. And Quins v Wasps on Sunday. That's kind of the picks, I think, of this weekend's fixtures. Some good ones there.
Absolutely.
There's also Exeter v Worcester if you're into blood sport.
I think the first game after Lions pick is always interesting because there's always like
some
a couple of guys who weren't
jilted folks
are going to put on shows for us.
That always does happen.
Yeah, no, every time it happens, and some guys will put on absolute shows just for Gatland and the boys to rub salt into those wounds. Or rather just to sort of big up themselves and put thoughts in the mind if people get injured, of course, as well.
Make some lemonade.
Make some lemonade is right. The top couture is also going ahead. Toulouse still atop the table, La Rochelle in second, the Champions Cup final, Cream rising to the top there. Indeed. No surprise. Clermont are just behind, 4 points shy of La Rochelle, and Racing 4 points shy of Clermont. Then Toulon 2 points further back, Lyon a point further back from that, Cast a point further back from that.
Ever there, Cast.
Yeah, making the end of season run. And watch out for them in the playoffs, I'm telling you. Bordeaux and Stade Francais 2 points behind Cast as well, still well in the fight for the repechage.
Yeah.
And Agen with 2 points.
Still
Two
points.
Still very
the
much
mighty Agen with 2 points. They will be going down.
There's a relegation scrap though down the bottom as well. I believe 2 teams go down, and Pau at the moment, or I always call them Pau, are near the bottom with Bayonne and Montpellier. Just
Bayonne, surely.
What did I say?
Bayonne.
As
in Bayonne.
Bayonne and Montpellier are just 4 points clear of Pau.
Yes.
So there's definitely a bit of a knife fight going on there as well.
Yeah.
It's great to see the tier 2 Love and Brive safe enough from relegation as well. 8 points clear.
I do like Brive.
No, I love Brive. I love the fact that they back the tier 2 guys. I love that they've Tato Abs and Dads on the books and playing games.
And they have Marques on the books as well, don't they? Portuguese guy. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm a big fan of Brive.
Yeah, so keep Brive alive. I believe
Lobs and Adsa as well.
That's right. It's a lot. It's a smorgasbord of tier 2 talent down in Brive, and it's nice to see them succeeding in the top couture.
100%.
With that, there are 4 rounds to go, both in the Premiership and in the top couture before the regular season finishes. And then this weekend there are a few humdingers in the top couture if you can watch them at all. Racing v Clermont on Saturday. That's pretty good. Toulon v Toulouse, also Saturday.
Racing Clermont's a quality game.
Yeah, I think those 2 are probably the best of this weekend's fixtures.
And I tell you, if Finn Russell doesn't get picked, he'll be one who will absolutely
light it up for Racing. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
100%.
Wouldn't be surprised if both those things happen.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, I suppose with that we will pivot on, because there was club rugby not just in Europe but the whole world wide as well. And it's becoming post-season time. I suppose we're going to start in Japan just because it's interesting. The top league, it finished with its playoffs. The playoffs were all pretty one-sided in terms of just the blowouts. I think there was one game that finished within a score and the rest were mahusive. So now we're into the final 8, quarter-final time. The cream has risen and we're mostly going to see some good games. On Saturday we have 2 games. You have Toyota Verblitz versus the Red Hurricanes. That's going to be at 5 a.m. Irish time, and then followed by the Cannon Eagles versus the Wild Knights at 7, so 2 hours gap. On Sunday there's only one game going ahead. There was meant to be 2. The game going ahead is Kubota Spears versus Kobe Steel, which is going to be at 4:45 a.m. And Suntory Goliath versus Black Rams was scheduled for 6, but sadly the game has had to be cancelled due to a COVID outbreak among the Black Rams, and that has given Suntory a walkover to the semi-finals.
Yeah, that's a real shame.
It is a bummer.
Like they needed an advantage.
There's only been a handful of games where they failed to score 60 this season, and Bowden Barrett has recently announced that he declined the offer to return to the Blues for the Trans-Tasman Super Rugby. He's going to see out the season with Suntory in Japan, and it's a shame because he'll now there's a 2-week break after this before they play the semis, so it'll be 3 weeks without Suntory playing a game, which could hurt them in terms of tempo, in terms of rhythm, in terms of just They're going to be facing one of the best teams in the comp when they get back to the field. But
I don't know. A bye at this season tends not to be a disadvantage at this time of the season. That
it's true.
An advantage.
It's true, and it is just a bummer for the Black Rams who managed to scrap to get themselves into that thing. They were in a kind of a playoff scrap themselves, managed to just get over, and now COVID unsticking.
Terrible.
Not
always
good
hate
news.
that.
Yeah,
absolutely. And then there's also the Superliga Americana de Rugby, the South American competition, is actually at its semi-final stage.
That's right.
The Jaguares, the Argentine side, are up against Olimpia Lions from Paraguay in the first semi-final, and Penarol from Uruguay take on Selknam. And very much it has been sort of as you'd expect, Argentina, then Uruguay, then Chile. What's interesting is that Olimpia Lions beat out the Cobras from Brazil, and they're Paraguay Olimpia Lions, and it's been I know the Argentine draft makes it definitely more even, but it's weird. Brazil was in a great place a couple of years ago with a bit of hype about them, and they've
been on the dip a little since
kind
then.
of caught out by the speed of the other South American teams. Really, they're just not doing the right things.
No, and they're not as forward dominant as they once were.
They're not as big and strong as all that. Despite that being their focus a few years back, and them catching some kind of poor South American scrums, catching them napping, and then creating some good highlights by dominating them up front. But they really haven't kicked on.
And they got pulverised by Portugal in that 2-test series last year in terms of their national side, and now they're missing out on
Chile, and now they're like, here they are losing to a Paraguayan team. I know it's not Brazil, it's a Brazilian team, a franchise team, the Cobras. But to lose out to the Paraguayan side and not even make the semi-finals, it definitely feels odd.
It's concerning if you're a Brazilian rugby fan. Definitely, I know the momentum has not been with them. Those both take place this Saturday. Those semi-finals, all in Montevideo. That's where we're seeing out the tournament, and the final will take place on Saturday week. Then also in Montevideo.
Yes, and I believe you can catch that. They have an app anyway. These I can't remember the name of the app. I have it here somewhere.
Right.
But there's an app.
I know they have broadcast some of them or highlights of them on YouTube on their YouTube channel as well. SLAR. SLAR.
And SSAR, I believe the app that is South America Rugby. South America Rugby is where they're broadcasting the games as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, and then also there's been Major League Rugby in the USA, and that has been pretty class to watch recently.
By contrast, it's not the postseason. It's just like getting into the middle of the season.
Yeah,
it's 6 rounds in.
I've really enjoyed the coverage of it. I've really enjoyed getting to know the teams.
The Rugby Network is where they're broadcasting it, and it's all free. You can watch it for free, and it's professionally done. Really good coverage.
You see CBS are covering some of the games, and you get to see their coverage, and then you get to see sort of some of the Fox Sport coverage and some of the NBC Sport coverage. It's great to see the American networks covering these games for starters, and then just for it to be available to us is great. And even some of the games that aren't broadcast we get to see online, and American fans get to see. If they can't get it on TV, they get to watch it there. But it's been great. It's the only shame is that there hasn't been that many fans at it, because I feel like teams like the Giltinis' brand new team would be developing quite the fan base.
They're starting to. There were a few fans in there for them last. Like it's amazing what winning can do. Like Giltinis are a perfect 6 from 6 and 6 bonus points, and they just look awesome in the context. They're playing a sport that hasn't been seen in the MLR yet, which is quick attacking.
They look kind of like a Super Rugby franchise, or at least in that mould.
Yeah,
and it's great to see from the American sort of fan base to get like a flavour of what this game can be.
Yeah,
because I think too often in the minds of Americans, it's sort of like rugby's just for like harder guys even than NFL players, and it's about big collisions with no pads.
And certainly when you look at the USA Eagles team that arrived at the World Cup in Japan.
Yeah,
they were very, very big, very strong. Had a pack that could nearly mingle with the top tier, but like they had no speed. Who was that guy on the wing? Who was like their captain? Who was like
your man who played for Saracens, was it?
What was his name? I can't remember.
What was
kind of an old stalwart at 14. He was doing their kicking as well for them, but he was just
I'm pretty sure
so slow on the turn. Like, I mean, when you consider what they are in sevens, which is like a bunch of kind of track athletes, sprinters who are now playing rugby. Yeah, you can feel like this exposure to
Chris Wiles,
speed. Chris Wiles.
Yeah, he was a Saracen for years.
No, that's actually not. Will Hooley. That's who I'm talking about.
Sorry, he was the out-half.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, Chris Wiles is who you mean, man.
I don't think it is. Chris Wiles, I know Chris Wiles. No.
Well, Will Hooley was a 10 for them, and Chris Wiles was on the wing.
Wasn't wasn't Aj at 10 for them?
Oh, you might be right, but Hooley was in.
Might have been at fullback.
Yeah,
but no, they're just in terms of a lack of speed, out and out speed, which is what they bring to the Sevens game throughout. It's nice to see the Giltinis, albeit with a lot of Australian and Pacific Island imports and a few Irish in there as well.
Yeah.
But it's just nice to see them playing that game, laying that foundation, getting these other teams thinking, you saw the defending champs, the 2-time champs now, Seattle, are pretty much the bottom.
Literally the worst team in it because they've sat on their laurels as the other teams have recruited and expanded their games.
Yeah.
There are some great teams in it though. Nola from New Orleans, I really like.
Awesome.
I like Damien Stevens, the Namibian scrum half,
Yeah,
playing
he
for
was
them.
awesome.
He was so good at the World Cup. Great to see him getting top level rugby. The Gilgronis are the closest match to the Giltinis, but there's a lot of fun teams. There's a lot of close teams, and outside of Seattle, really, I think every other team is sort of close enough to each other, and you're getting sort of up and down performances, tight games, as well as some blowouts as well. The Giltinis very much the top of the crop. But the rest is an absolute right scrap, and they're playing a good brand. As crowds return, it's only going to get better, and it's really well produced. And I've really enjoyed watching it. It's been great.
100%. And actually, a shout out to whoever runs that Old Glory DC Twitter account that we had to follow. I think one of the games we were trying to watch, the satellite feed was down. So
it was the
Giltinis game, and they were getting absolutely pumped, but it didn't stop their guy on Twitter being like hilarious in covering it. It was a great one.
Their Twitter game is on point as well. Yeah, so they're a delight really to watch, and as is the whole league. I've everything about it I love.
And it's very easily accessible. I would encourage all of you who are just, if you have a Tuesday night, it's all up there. Like if there's no other rugby on, you can watch a game. If you don't know what's going on, you'll find it's very entertaining. Certainly.
Yeah, I agree. I've really enjoyed it. Listen, now that all the sort of club rugby and all that stuff is parked, we're going to wrap up the show with the all rugby news of the week.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a bit to get through because, obviously it's been a while since we've been here, so we'll run through some stuff.
Sure.
We're going to start just with brand new news, which was the announcement, obviously, of the European Player of the Year award, which is quite a prestigious one. It's been won by some great players. Sam Simmons is the reigning Player of the Year. I think it's a reward with real pedigree and a real landmark in a career. The nominees are Greg Aldrett and Will Skelton from La Rochelle, along with Antoine Dupont, Jerome Kino, and Julien Marchand from Toulouse. So there's 3 French, 1 Aussie, and 1 Kiwi. It's interesting that Kino got in over Vito, because I think Vito has probably been the standout Kiwi back rower.
Indeed. I agree. I think that Toulouse are probably a little bit disproportionately represented here, because I think La Rochelle have been more impressive this season.
Yeah.
But of that shortlist, I think it's got to be Skelton.
Well, on the semi-final performance, that was the single best performance from any player in the competition so far.
Much less on the short list.
He has been special for them, and you hear Wilson O'Gara talk that the acquisition of him, he's actually he had a reputation at one point in his career of being not that fit.
I think Sarri's changed that in him.
He came in, according to Rog, and drove the standard and was
and he came from that Sarri's team that people liked to decry, but they were nothing if not professional.
That was one of the best club rugby side. That was probably the best club rugby side I've ever seen. That Saracens team, the one that beat us in the final. It was a special team.
It was. They've been completely plundered for parts now, including Skelton at La Rochelle.
And Vincent Koch elsewhere.
And actually,
Vincent
in
Koch's
Bath
still there
that.
actually, but George Cruz went to Japan, and a few others have disappeared as well. Some of them are still there. They'll be back, Saracens.
They will.
For this year, it's all about La Rochelle and Toulouse, and congratulations to those nominees.
My
money'd be on Skelton, but it's all about who wins the final.
It is all about who wins the final, and I wouldn't bet against Dupont getting it just because people like to give Dupont points.
People like Dupont, and if he scores a winning try, why not? He's a class player. Now there's just a couple of other bits of news that we're also going to look at, just as far as the test games later in the year. There's a report, not confirmed, but a report from RMC Sport stating that the French are going to host the All Blacks on November 20th. Which will be the same venue as the World Cup opener, pretty much 2 years after.
Little dry run.
I'm really excited about these inter-hemisphere matches now. It's been so long. We've
it
been
has,
starved
I'm sure there are Kiwi fans feeling exactly the same way. Want to travel, want to tour, want to play outside. Sure, even Aaron Smith talking about like it's been 2 seasons of Super Rugby out to row. I'm getting lumps knocked out of me by my mates. It's time to play someone else.
Yeah, it's all about rugby's all about traveling the world and playing all the best from everywhere. And it's definitely one of the strengths of the game is going around playing great test matches.
Absolutely.
It's always
and
the highlight
touring is one of the things that the players all love to do. So it'd be
can't
great.
come soon enough.
Yeah, can't come soon enough is right. And then in other news, in the wake of Ireland's tour to Fiji being cancelled amid COVID-19 concerns, it's been confirmed that Andy Farrell's team will take on the USA Eagles in Dublin for a test on the 10th of July. Where was that? In a recent podcast interview, the head coach of the USA, Gary Gold, said that he would go up against Ireland and England in July.
Yeah, he's saying basically they're going to play England on the 3rd of July and Ireland a week later on the 10th.
And I'm not sure when they're playing the Springboks as well. Is that after?
I think that'll be before, because what the games you're talking about there are during the Lions tour.
So it must be before, because a hit out for the Springboks. Yeah,
but I got to say I'm very excited to see. First of all, I'm delighted that Ireland have a game against someone not in the Six Nations. That's great. A game against Tier 2 side is no bad thing. I'm also very excited by the sort of array of American talent that I've been watching in the MLR. They've all got experience now of playing in a higher level of rugby.
A higher tempo of rugby, for sure.
Higher tempo and higher level, just undeniably this year. And guys like Cam Dolan and others, even Adge McGinty at Sale has been fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to Gary Gold putting together his first team of the cycle, and I'm curious to see what they look like.
Yeah, I hope they look quicker. I hope they don't lose their hard-nosed physicality that they do have, and they have some really good barnstorming forwards like Cam Dolan, but I would like to see a little bit more haste with the ball. I'd like to see them be zippy out wide. To be honest, I'm excited for that. I think it's a great thing that we are playing. I think it's it was a necessary thing. It's unfortunate that the Fiji thing is being cancelled. It would have been a nice thing to do, but it's understandable. It is still COVID times, all of this, and it's making the most of them. And obviously the USA have been quick to put their hands up when the Springboks were looking for a game. It's the USA, and now here they are.
Let's do it. Absolutely, I'm 100% on board with that. And the Fiji news was bad news from an Irish point of view, but there's great news on the back of it. New Zealand were scheduled to play Italy this July, which is like an enraging fixture in my book, like a game that just should not happen. And thankfully the Italians have opted out, citing COVID-19 concerns. I would cite rugby concerns. But
we don't need another shellacking, boys.
No, absolutely not. But New Zealand are now looking to pit the All Blacks against Fiji and then Samoa in a 3-test. So Fiji again, and then Samoa in a 3-test tour of the Pacific Islands. That's actually unprecedented. That's potentially really exciting.
Why don't Italy do like a 3-test tour of Georgia?
Yeah, no, indeed. All these things. Italy shouldn't be there, but they're not going to be. There's going to be this great moment for Pacifica Rugby, which is brilliant in light of the new news about the Pacifica teams in Super Rugby. The All Blacks are going to come to town, play Fiji twice, probably shellac them, and then play Samoa and probably shellac them. But it's going to be great.
A little harsh on Tonga, but
it's good. Yeah, a little harsh on Tonga, but it's still going to be great. I think that's going to be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to watching those games.
Yeah, and then Fiji and Drew are coming in as well. Like it's a new time for it. It's great for the Pacific Islands to be getting a professional franchise or two, as the case may be. But then also, All Blacks touring. It's only good for the locality, for the rugby in general, and they'll be great games. Both of those sides are fun to watch whenever they play anyone else, so I expect good contests.
We also had the fixtures, last bit of fixtures news. We also had the fixtures for next year's Six Nations, which is ages away. We're not going to go through them all now. Very similar tournament from an Ireland point of view. We start with Wales, then have France, then have the gap week, and then Italy, and then the gap week, and then it's Scotland and England are flipped. It's England then Scotland this time, but very similar Six Nations from Ireland's point of view. Super Saturday is Wales, Italy, Ireland, Scotland, and then France, England. So no telling who the organisers of the tournament think are going to be at the business end of next year's competition using their crystal ball.
Yes, indeed. Maybe England will be 5th again.
Yeah, who knows?
Probably
not.
I
doubt it, yeah.
But besides that, we had the Melbourne Rebels appointing a new interim coach. He'll take over from Dave Wessels after the latter announced last week that he would be stepping down from the position. Kevin Foote will take over the reins for the time being. 42-year-old has coaching experience in his native South Africa and in Australian National Rugby Championship as well. So he's been in the Rebels camp for about 4 years, and he seems like the guy to
Yeah.
at least be caretaker manager.
Yeah, it's a shame to see Dave Wessels go. It's been a curious project with the Rebels since I think he was with the Force and then he left and went over to the Rebels. But he's been there a while, like, and he seems like he's always seemed a nice guy. He talks very well about the game.
He definitely improved them because
He's
like
thoughtful,
they were abject
Yeah.
before that change that saw the Western Force booted out of Super Rugby, and then kind of a rejig of resources, and then suddenly the Rebels were capable of playing a bit.
Yeah.
And part of that goes down to the coaching ticket that have been there. Like they were
I guess the
rubbish for the
frustration
seasons
is
prior.
just that they haven't the last couple of years. Like they got to that level where they were thereabouts, and they haven't really been able to kick on and
they
threaten.
certainly haven't been progressing at the same clip as the top two teams who are now in the final.
But I do like Dave Wessels, and I hope I'd be curious to see what else he does, because he seems like a smart guy who's been a bit unlucky, a bit like Rob Penny. Like it just hasn't happened for him there. But maybe if he goes somewhere else, interesting things will happen. And we also had the news last week that the Crusaders have signed Pablo Matera. There was a bit of pushback about that.
Definitely some controversy amid that.
They put out a statement saying we don't condone the statements, but made the determination that this was an error in judgment that is not truly reflective of his character.
Yeah.
That was the statement they put out, which is interesting. I think it's fair enough. If he can put it to bed, he can put it to bed. He's
still a bloody good rugby player behind all that.
If the Crusaders ever do have to travel to South Africa again, he'll feel it. I mean, they will at some point play South African teams.
Yeah, that's true.
I reckon the next time he plays a South African team, he's going to feel it.
Probably.
They don't have short memories in South Africa.
No,
either.
they don't. Not for that kind of thing. But it was a controversial signing. He's a remarkable player. It's going to be a good resource for the Crusaders, but it might give some bad juju. You never know.
He's a remarkable personality as well.
He is, yeah.
I mean, I like that. Those statements were awful, but I don't necessarily think that he's buried as a character because of it either. So yeah, an interesting signing, and curious to see how it goes. We had some interesting news. I think really good news from Wales. From Welsh Regional Rugby. Good news from Welsh Regional Rugby, which is a rare thing.
Indeed.
They have the Ospreys reportedly are going to make shrewd signings of foreign players. Yeah, I know.
No.
They're getting two lads from the Highlanders, one of which you'd be familiar with, Michael Collins, who's been doing the
really
rounds.
good back three dude.
And he's played at centre this year for the Highlanders, grabbed some tries. Versatile, veteran, really class player.
Was never quite at the level of All Black, but was always at the level of really good club pro.
Yeah, and at his best, like mixes it and delivers at that level. Yeah. Like really quality player. Great shrewd signing for the Ospreys, going to improve their attack no end, I'd say. Yeah. Good nuts and bolts man to have for the Six Nations time as well. And they've also signed the young Irish lock Jack Regan.
Yeah, who's been impressing ever since. He came to play like very much provincial rugby, not even Super Rugby. Wasn't it?
Shone for Otago and then got picked up by the Highlanders and played a few games for them this year, and now he's off to Ospreys, back near enough home waters.
Awesome.
I will watch his progress with great interest. Yeah.
And I like what I know what you mean with the great signs, because that's like there are many pitfalls befalling Welsh regional rugby, no doubt, and there's uphill battles, and it's easy to sit from the outside looking in and comment on what should or shouldn't be done. But one thing that like really shouldn't be done that has been done is like spending loads of money on a guy
signings.
Yeah, guys like former Springbok Uzer Kasim, who like we watched for the season prior. He's rubbish. Like he's not. No, I'm not being harsh, but it's like he's not a Springbok. No. Like it's the same way
he was a Springbok during the Alistair Coetzee
you can build Lima Supawonga as an All Black if you want to sign an All Black, but it's like you're not getting an All Black, you're getting an OK 10.
That's the thing,
and you're getting him at an inflated price tag, so he's not a good value for money guy. What you should be doing is looking at like Portugal, looking at Georgia, looking at like places, tier 2 places where you can get guys who are or guys like Michael Collins.
Yeah, making shrewd signings. Like I look at John Porch for Connacht, really smart signing, just an Aussie Sevens guy, not on everybody's radar, but a quality player.
There needs to
making
be good,
signings
shrewd,
like that.
There needs to be good scouting going on to find those guys. But then, like you don't need to be paying through the nose when you don't even have money to pay your own players. There, paying through the nose for a guy you're not going to get that kind of value out of. I'm thinking Sam Lousy for Scarlets as well. Another guy who's like.
He's big, but he has huge discipline issues. Yeah. Like that, Glasgow made a similar mistake getting in TJ Iwani, who like TJ Iwani at his best, a very fine player and has had some great games for Samoa, attributedly gifted. But he has huge discipline issues. He came into Glasgow, he started giving up cards and penalties. He's now been carded twice in 3 months. Yeah. Like I think a red card for one. I think 2 red cards in 3 months actually. Yeah. Like really bad start to his tenure there, and I just think. these two have the ring of really shrewd signings from the Ospreys, and a bit more of that in sort of the GM role, or whatever you'd call it, the management role of those clubs.
Needs to be more savvy in terms of that.
I think this is a good direction for
more
Ospreys,
money ball.
so I'm excited for it.
Thinking.
Absolutely. But there was actually some bad news from Munster and for the Springboks ahead of the Lions tour that RG Snyman is going to need surgery on his knee again.
That's not good news.
This is not ACL related, allegedly, but it is a knee issue, and he's apparently going to be pushed back by weeks, not months, but it is going to be weeks until he returns to training.
It's going to affect Rassie Erasmus's line of thinking, because he just hasn't had any games. The last game he played was his first game for Munster, and that was a while ago now.
Indeed, it's hard to imagine him featuring in the Test series at this point, but maybe, you never know.
It's true.
On a positive note for Rassie, Andre Pollard and Peter Steph du Toit returned from long injuries this weekend, and both got through their
and Khaleesi looked awesome for the Sharks,
didn't he? And so did Lukhanyo Am, much better, much closer to true form. And Delindy for Munster in their last outing looked really good. They're starting to wake up.
And Faf looking okay at Sale.
Oh yeah, they're starting to wake up.
Safa's all over the place. Don't be writing off the Safas.
How can you write off the Safas?
They're world champions, lads.
Rob Valentini, the class back rower for the Brumbies, also signed on until 2023, which would be a point of relief. Not to be leaking any more back row talent over there.
Yeah, indeed. Actually, that's a very, very good one. And then what was this for?
I have the last story I have down here, just to round up, was just this funny story about Eddie Jones and Suntory, which has been brewing, basically because Clive Woodward has exploded in anger at Eddie Jones continuing to work in a consultancy role. He's basically using his annual leave to go to Japan and do an advisory coaching role with Suntory.
Fine. Which
he's done apparently. Now, to be fair to Eddie Jones, this is something he's done for over 20 years. He's had a long commitment to the club and a long history in Japan. Woodward's issue is that he's with Bowden Barrett, and that like in 2 years Bowden Barrett's going to be going to the World Cup, and we don't need the England coach coaching Bowden Barrett 2 years from World Cup. So he's going mad, saying this is a joke, that this is ridiculous, it makes English rugby look stupid, and as head coach you need to have 100% commitment to your players, or you ask for 100% commitment from your players, and you should give it back in return. It's a really bad look, and that's Woodward's take. I mean,
disagree. I think it speaks to the credit of the loyalty of the man. Like, he laid his foundations in Japan, which is no strange. Like, that's not uncommon knowledge. Like, England were so impressed by Japan's showing in their home World Cup that they headhunted Eddie Jones. And the fact that he's showing loyalty to the club that he made his home while he was there, that speaks to his credit as a character.
And it's also like the fact that Barrett's there is incidental. It's not like he's just gone over there. This is something he's been doing for 20 years, including when they went to the World Cup final a couple of years back. So this is irrelevant. This is something you bring up only when you're losing as a baton to beat the guy you're angry with.
Indeed.
It's just because he's a better coach than you, Clive, isn't it?
Well, partly, except he won the World Cup.
Well, Clive won the World Cup. You can never say what's so plainly obvious, which is that, he's kind of lost the plot when it comes to rugby, Clive Woodward.
A little bit. Well, like, I think what he's so outraged about is that he just learned this the other day and wanted to make a statement. That's what my take on that is.
Fill those column inches.
Yeah, indeed.
Anyway,
and another thing.
That was just a funny one to end the show. But a lot of news, a lot of show. And we've done it all. We've covered it all. We chatted Lions, we chatted finals, we've grown as people since the beginning of this podcast.
We've laughed, we've lived,
it's all gone down.
But
now I think it is time to wrap it up and say, listen, if you like what you hear, subscribe. Please be sure to enter our conversation. Anything you want to chat to us about, anything
Lions
we got wrong,
picks, anything on what you think's coming up in the Super Rugby finals. Takes on the club footy over here, any reaction to the women's rugby as well, any thoughts, leave them in the comment below, but also do smash the like button, smash the bell button. Anything like that does really help the channel out a lot.
Likes help, shares help, all of that stuff is great for helping us out and getting our sort of our long form rugby chatter to as far and wide as reaches as we can get. I think we've done a good job so far of spreading our love through the globe and our love of the game right across the globe into all corners, and rugby nerds everywhere unite on this channel.
Absolutely.
And long may it continue.
Absolutely.
Don't forget also to tune into our live show on Thursday, where we're going to be going live as the Lions team is announced, I'm sure, along with just about every other rugby channel. But sure, listen, we'll be one of the ones there chatting about it. If you want to hear our take, feel free to click in, ask a question, and we'll be looking forward to that.
Only delighted to answer.
100%.
Absolutely. All right, folks. With that, we'll sign off.
See
you
care,
next
guys.
time.
Bye-bye. All right. Always the most pressure-filled moment of the podcast. This is like the making or breaking of. Oh, indeed.
Oh, it's an overthrow.
Overthrow, man.
It's straight into the other team's hand.
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh, that's a nail. Whoa, nice. Game over, son.